Hey guys, tonight we begin with a quiet question that has hovered at the edge of myth and memory for centuries. A question that asks gently and insistently, could our ancestors have encountered beings from beyond the stars? Welcome, I'm glad you're here. Tonight we will move slowly and softly through a long, calming exploration of the Ancient Astronaut Hypothesis, the idea that in ages past, visitors from the sky touched the lives of early humans, left traces in stone and story, and shaped the path of civilizations. We will listen to old voices, read weathered stones, and follow threads of memory that run from desert sands to high mountain plateaus. This is not a rush to verdicts. It is an invitation to wonder, to imagine, and to rest in the gentle unfolding of possibilities. Before we settle in and begin our peaceful journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if what I share here truly resonates with you. Your support helps me create more of these videos, and if you feel like it, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see the many corners of the world where we connect. Now, dim the lights, make yourself comfortable, and let's ease into tonight's journey together as we explore what lies ahead. Tonight's path will be slow. We'll begin with the forbidden question itself. Why it feels dangerous to ask, who has asked it before, and what small persistent clues keep bringing people back. We'll meet some of the most well-known proponents, people like Erich von Däniken, Zecharia Sitchin, and Giorgio Tsoukalos, and we'll hear how their ideas reached into popular imagination. We'll pause with ancient texts, passages that speak of beings who descended from the sky in fire and smoke, and of crafts that gleamed in the heavens. We'll touch on petroglyphs and temple stones, on startling engineering feats, and on whispers of hidden chambers and suppressed finds. Throughout, my voice will be steady and calm, and the pace will be gentle, each detail given space to be seen, felt, and rested with. I'll give you small teasers as we go. Later chapters will lead us through great pyramids, forgotten machines, and oral traditions that name the sky people. There will be stories of witnesses, of engineers who pause and wonder, and of ancient words that, when read closely, seem to hum with the same questions we now ask. If you stay with me until the end, we will tie these threads together into a quiet, wide view, not to force conclusions, but to leave you with a luminous possibility to carry into sleep, that we may be older and more connected to the heavens than we imagine. Take a soft breath now. Let your shoulders loosen. You are safe. We will travel slowly. Chapter 1. The Forbidden Question. There is a hush that comes with asking forbidden questions. It is part curiosity, part reverence. The question we begin with, whether ancient peoples met beings not of this earth, is one such hush. It has been carried by scholars, storytellers, and seekers for decades. It has been greeted with wonder by some, skepticism by others, and by many it has been quietly, persistently intriguing. The idea at the heart of our journey is called the Ancient Astronaut Hypothesis. In its simplest form, it asks, what if events described in ancient myths, religious texts, and unexplained monuments are not just figurative stories, but memories, preserved, retold, and transformed, of encounters between humans and intelligent beings from beyond our world? This hypothesis is not new. It has been shaped and shaped again by voices who listened and then wrote. Three names are often spoken when this idea is introduced: Erich von Däniken, Zecharia Sitchin, and Giorgio Tsoukalos. Each one brought different notes to the conversation. Erich von Däniken, writing in the late 1960s, invited readers to walk among the ruins and imagine them through a different lens. He pointed to monumental structures, to curious carvings, and to texts that spoke of gods who came from the sky. Von Daniken's books were not dry treatises. They were invitations, bright, provocative, and designed to kindle wonder. Zecharia Sitchin took another path, reading ancient Sumerian tablets and suggesting translations that described visitors who came to Earth with purpose. He gave names, Anunnaki among them, and wove a narrative in which these sky beings influenced the course of the early civilization. Sitchin's work reached people with an appetite for origins, for a story that connected the distant shimmering of stars with the first cities and the earliest laws. Georgios Tsoukalos, a later and energetic proponent, brought those ideas into modern popular culture. He stood before a camera and made the case, softly insistent, that the patterns we find across continents, repeated motifs in art, and sudden leaps in human capability might be best understood when we allow for the possibility that contact happened long ago. These thinkers did not merely point to single artifacts. They assembled a mosaic of hints, stories of fiery chariots, sudden technological jumps, carvings of figures that wear what look like suits, and myths that describe teachers who descended from the sky. When collected, these hints create a feeling more than a proof, the feeling that something persistent links the sky and the story. Let us listen to some of those stories. In the Book of Enoch, an ancient text that predates many later writings, there are passages about watchers, beings who descended and taught hidden knowledge, who moved among people and left traces that later generations would call law, craft, and even temptation. In the great Sanskrit epics such as the Mahabharata, scenes unfold where craft streak across the sky like comets, weapons move with blinding light, and kings ride in vehicles of fire and smoke. Those images are not mere ornaments of language, they carry the rhythms of experience, people trying to explain something beyond their ordinary day. We should imagine these descriptions the way a child might describe thunder as a giant waking, or the way a sailor might tell of a phosphorescent wave that seemed alive. When people encounter the inexplicable, they describe it in the vocabulary they possess. For a people who have not yet built modern engines, the nearest words are often divine or supernatural. Those words do not diminish the reality of what was seen, they translate it. There is a delicate balance to strike here. We're not attempting to force ancient people into our modern categories. Instead, we are gently reinterpreting certain motifs. Chariots are described as fiery because they burned with light. Teachers are called gods because of their knowledge. And strange tools are named in terms of the closest analogies. When taken together, these repeated images across cultures form a pattern worth quiet attention. Consider how often the sky itself becomes central in these accounts. The stars, the sun, the moon. They're canvases on which many cultures projected meaning. But in several accounts, the sky is more than backdrop. It is the source of change. The people who recorded these memories described visitors who came with knowledge that changed agriculture, architecture, and the very shape of society. They spoke of sudden leaps, the building of cities, the organization of labor, the birth of writing, events that, in some places, seem to arrive as if overnight. The forbiddenness of our question comes not from its difficulty alone, but from what it implies. If true, it reshapes origin stories and invites us to reconsider ancient hierarchies and the source of knowledge. It suggests that the past may have had contact with a wider cosmos, and that our own story is part of a much larger one. For many, that thought is wondrous, for others, unsettling. Both reactions are natural. Tonight we will hold the wonder and the uncertainty like warm stones in our hands, heavy, grounding, and strangely comforting. There are also softer human reasons this question endures. Around campfires and hearths, generations told the same kinds of tales, of bearded travellers who taught tools, of strangers who knew the stars, of women who birthed children with exceptional abilities. Some of these narratives became sacred, some were carved in stone, some were painted on cave walls. What is compelling is how often these themes repeat across distant places that had no known contact with each other. It raises a quiet curiosity. Could different peoples record the same kind of encounter because it happened, or because certain experiences simply feel universal? The answer is not demanded tonight. Instead, we follow the trail of clues and feel their pull. Before we let our minds rest on this opening chapter, take a breath and listen to a scene tucked into memory. A high plain at dusk. A small village gathers as a bright object appears beyond the hills. A silver light sweeps, then steadies. An elder points and whispers a name that has been used for generations. A god, a spirit, a star being. Children sleep with their hands over their mouths. The light fades. The community remembers. The story is told. The story becomes a lesson. Over time, the lesson is written down, carved and painted. That chain of memory is how myth becomes history, and how history, under a different light, can become a clue. Tonight, in the chapters that follow, we will gently unfold more of these clues. We will visit stones and tablets, listen to folk memories, and sit with experts who have asked similar questions. We will allow the possibility of contact to remain a real and compelling thread running through ancient time, and we will do all of this with calm, slow narration, breathing pauses, and long imagined horizons to help your mind relax. As we close this first chapter, remember a soft promise. Later, we will hear voices from ancient tablets, we will examine strange monuments, and we will follow the trail of stories that cross oceans and mountains. If you stay with me until the end, there will be a surprising connective idea waiting, a quiet pattern that links many of the threads we're stitching together now. For those who drift in and out of sleep, that pattern will remain like a star beyond the eyelids, steady and patient. Were these divine messengers or extraterrestrial visitors? Chapter 2. Messages Written in Stone. We move now, with steady breaths, from the hush of a question into the patient listening of the rock. There are places on Earth where time seems pressed into stone like a soft hand into clay. On these rock faces, in the slow light of dawn or under the silver hush of night, images remain, painted, pecked, and carved by hands that lived far from our own time. Tonight, we will walk along those stone pages, tracing figures and shapes that have fascinated scholars, artists, and quiet observers for generations. We will let the images speak slowly, as if telling their stories at bedtime. Imagine a distant plateau under a night sky so wide that the Milky Way seems to lie like a pale river on the horizon. The air is dry and clear. On the weathered surface of sandstone, ochres and charcoal still hold the trace of paint applied thousands of years ago. Here, in the deep deserts of North Africa, there are painted figures, human-like, sometimes bearing what could be interpreted as helmets or round headgear, sometimes shown near shapes that could be read as craft or vessels. Their arms are long, their poses sometimes ritual, sometimes still as if frozen mid-step. When you let your eyes rest on them, you feel a quiet familiarity along with a gentle strangeness. These figures are old, and yet they reach towards something that looks surprisingly modern. In another place, across the seas in the high valleys of Italy, there are rock panels densely covered in carved scenes. Reeds, animals, the geometry of life. Worn human figures carry tools or hold hands in procession. Among these scenes, some carvings show beings with rounded helmets and forms that make many wonder. Are these simply stylized humans in ritual dress, or are they careful depictions of unusual encounters? The shapes in the stone invite interpretation, and they invite us to hold more than one possibility at once. Travel now, in the imagination, to the wet and ancient lands of Australia, where on sheltered cliffs the Wandjina faces stare out from plastered rock surfaces. Bold, circular eyes, halos of line and colour, and sometimes a deliberate absence of a mouth, give these images a presence that is both calming and eerie. To many Aboriginal communities, these figures are sacred. They are creator beings, custodians of the law, controllers of rain and seasons. Their images are respected, painted with ceremony, and renewed across generations. To an observer unfamiliar with the cultural context, their large, helmet-like heads and steady gaze can suggest something else. An otherworldly visitor, a being that came from the sky carrying knowledge of weather and water. Yet in every telling it is important to honour the voices of the people who keep these images alive. Their stories are not simple evidence for an outside theory, but living traditions woven into identity and land. When we read petroglyphs and cave paintings, slowly and with care a few patterns emerge. Across continents, across epochs, humans have pictured beings associated with the sky. Sometimes these are winged figures, sometimes radiant ones, sometimes clearly described as deities. Sometimes, especially in the more geometric or abstract images, there are shapes that can be read as objects moving through air, arcs, discs, lines, trailing dots like exhaust, and repetitive motifs that could be wheels or engines. The eye trained by modern machines and modern ideas sometimes sees the outlines of ships and suits. The thoughtful eye of an archaeologist sees layers of meaning, ritual, myth, social role, and symbolic language. Both readings can coexist in the same breath. There are ways to read the rock that are careful and kind. One approach is to look at context. What else appears near a figure? Is the image in a place where people gathered? Is it near water, a burial site, or a place that marks seasonal migration? Context can tell us whether an image was likely part of a ceremony, a map, or a family record. Another approach is to listen to the oral traditions that surround a site. Indigenous elders and local storytellers sometimes describe encounters with beings from the sky or star people who taught skills, warned of floods, or brought new laws. These stories are not always literal eyewitness accounts. They're often poetic, layered, and metaphorical. Yet when oral memory aligns with unusual imagery on the rock, a pattern forms that is hard to ignore. It is also tender to remember that stone does not speak plainly. The people who made these images lived with different languages, different mythic frameworks, and different experiences of the world. A figure that looks like a person in a suit to us might have been a shaman dressed for a ritual, wearing ornate feathers and masks that covered the head. A circular shape that seems like a disc might be a sun symbol, a shield, or a stylized bird. The point is not to force a single reading, but to notice that some images are striking in ways that invite further gentle curiosity. They keep the question alive without demanding an answer. Across these rock galleries, there are stories that enrich the visual record. Local elders sometimes recount that their ancestors watched lights move in the sky, or that certain family lines trace their origins to beings who came from above. These traditions can be specific, a clan that remembers a metal bird or a teacher who could cure with a touch, or they can be grand and cosmological, describing the sky as the source of order and law. When anthropologists sit with such storytellers, what they often find is not fanciful invention, but cultural memory, a way communities make sense of origins, change, and powerful events. At the same time, some of the most compelling images appear in places of ceremony. Figures might wear gear that looks functional, padded torsos, rounded helmets, or implements that can be read as instruments. The way such figures are drawn, isolated, central, sometimes placed within geometric shapes that could be seen as enclosures, nudges the imagination toward the idea of craft and control. When similar motifs show up in distant places, the pattern deepens. Why, across vast oceans and mountain ranges, do humans sometimes picture the same sorts of things? Is it coincidence, shared symbolism, parallel myth-making, or the imprint of common experiences? The ancient astronaut idea leans toward a common experience, that certain visits or teachings left a mark on human memory and material culture. As we breathe, consider the tenderness in interpreting these stones. To say that ancient people were simple is to deny the complexity written in their art. They observed the skies with patience, recorded what mattered, and repeated images that encoded knowledge. Migration patterns, star cycles, seasonal rains, and perhaps for some, the memory of visitors who changed the way they farmed, navigated, or organized their communities. The stones may keep records that are practical as much as mythic. That is part of their power. Hold for a moment the image of a small, wind-polished canyon where a family once gathered, telling stories under a canopy of stars. A child pointed to the painted figures on the wall and was taught the names of the stars and the lore of the seasons. Whether those images represented gods, masked ancestors, or visitors from the sky, they shaped how people saw their place in the world. They taught caution and wonder, duty and gratitude. In that sense, the messages written in stone are not only about the past, they are living instructions about how to be in the world. Before we move on to other chapters, a quiet hint of what is to come. Later, we will compare these painted and carved messages with engineering feats, with sudden leaps in knowledge, and with stories written on clay and metal. We will ask whether these images were artful metaphors, careful records, or perhaps both, each layer adding to a richer story. Rest with that idea now, rocks that listen, images that remember, and a human thread that runs from the breath of one generation to the next. The stones do not rush to explain themselves, they only wait, patient and steady, until we come to read. Chapter 3. The Sky Gods and the First Civilizations. We continue now, soft and steady, into a world of clay tablets and river valleys, where the first great cities rose like slow breaths from the earth. Picture a long plain cradled by a life-giving river. In the cool morning mist, reeds whisper and small boats cut across glints of light. People gather at the water's edge to trade, to tell stories, to mark the passage of seasons. Over generations, simple huts give way to houses with courtyards, then to streets, then to temples with stepped platforms that reach like fingers toward the sky. This transformation did not happen purely by accident. It grew from knowledge, labor, and designs that were learned and shared. But sometimes the speed of change makes us pause. In a few places, the shift from scattered bands of foragers to organized urban life seems to happen with startling quickness, as if some new idea, some catalytic knowledge, had entered the culture and accelerated development. In the river valleys of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates meet the light, people began to carve marks into clay, the earliest cuneiform, keeping accounts of grain, of law, of kings. In those tablets, myths and administrative notes sit in close company. Here we find enduring stories of the Anunnaki, the ones who are said to have come down from the heavens. These beings, in the old narratives, are not merely distant gods. They are described as having a role in shaping cities, teaching crafts, and influencing the fate of humans. The language used is ancient and symbolic, steeped in ritual and cosmology, but read slowly and with a mind open to metaphor and memory. These accounts sometimes present images that resonate with the idea of visitors who brought tools, knowledge, and a new social order. Consider for a moment what such an introduction of knowledge might mean. When a people learn new agricultural practices, irrigation techniques, or metallurgical skills, entire societies can reorganize within a few generations. A new ability to store surplus leads to specialization. Specialization leads to craft and learning. Learning leads to written records and institutions. This chain reaction is a familiar part of human history. The intriguing question is whether, at points where the chain appears unexpectedly long or rapid, external instruction, a model, a gift, an intervention, might have been a factor. Those who explore the ancient astronaut idea suggest that such external instruction could explain certain leaps, not as a replacement of human ingenuity, but as a supplement that tilted the balance toward rapid advancement. There are images that deepen the mystery. Some tablets and inscriptions, when described in plain language, contain references to chariots of the gods, vehicles that move across the sky, and tools of light that shine with a brilliance beyond ordinary lamps. The metaphors are rich and layered, because these were sacred texts, not scientific manuals. Yet the rhythms of the descriptions, travel, descent, teaching, and departure, repeat across myths. When we set such passages beside the archaeological evidence of sudden architectural advances, the two kinds of records create a ripple in our imagination, story and stone reflecting and amplifying each other. One gentle story helps to illustrate how potent such a memory can be. Imagine a craftsman in an early city, a man whose hands know the rhythm of cutting reeds, mixing mortar and shaping mud bricks. One night, perhaps during a festival, he sees a figure descend in light, a being who shows a new way to bind stones, a method that reduces effort and increases speed. The craftsman learns the method, teaches his apprentices, and the city's structures begin to change. Walls straighten, temples rise higher. Over time, the original visitor becomes a sacred teacher in stories, and his technique becomes part of the communal knowledge. That transformation, from encounter to technique to myth, is the kind of cultural process the Ancient Astronaut Hypothesis leans on. It suggests that extraordinary events, if they happened, would naturally be absorbed into myth and ritual even as they left practical traces. Archaeologists sometimes speak of the Neolithic Revolution or the Urban Revolution to describe the same sorts of processes we are exploring. They point to many incremental causes: climate stability, population pressures, trade networks. Yet there are moments when experts admit to a puzzled pause, an engineering solution or astronomical precision that seems to appear before the expected technological scaffolding existed. In those pauses, the ancient astronaut idea finds fertile ground. It is not a claim that all progress was alien-driven. Rather, it proposes that intermittent contact, the sharing of techniques, measurements, or conceptual frameworks, could have acted as a catalyst in certain key places. Another thread worth listening to is the social framing of sky beings. In many of these early societies, the divine and the technical were not separated the way modern observers separate science and religion. A bright light in the sky could be both an omen and a machine. A messenger could be both God and engineer. This blending is important because it means that ancient accounts that read like myth might also contain encoded practical knowledge. The scribes who recorded astronomical cycles were also temple priests. Their motivations included both ritual and calculation. When astronomical knowledge becomes precise, the tracking of Sirius, the prediction of solstices, and awareness of planetary cycles, it changes agriculture and ritual calendars alike. The methods for such tracking require observation, measurement, and sometimes instruments. Where did those methods arise? In many cases, they were homegrown. In others, the timing invites curiosity. It is also gentle to remember that the idea of deities teaching humanity is itself an enduring human motif. Societies often explain pivotal advances by attributing them to a teacher from on high. It comforts and dignifies the ordinary by linking it to the sacred. The ancient astronaut view reads such motifs as perhaps more literal than strictly mythic, suggesting that the teacher could have been best understood as an actual being with knowledge that looked, to ancient eyes, indistinguishable from divinity. As we imagine these early cities under slow suns and starlit nights, we should notice the human texture. Law codes being inscribed, canals being dug, marketplaces forming, children learning to count. The presence of any external influence would have been woven into this texture like a new thread in a familiar cloth. It would not have erased human creativity. It would have mingled with it, refined it, and been sanctified in story. Let your mind rest on one small image before we move on. An elderly scribe, the clay tablet warming under the sun on a low bench, his stylus pressing wedges into wet clay as he records a skyborne tale in the same breath as a list of grain rations. The mingling of the mundane and the mythic is where the sky gods become part of daily life. Whether those gods were strictly metaphors or actual visitors, their presence in the narrative shaped what cities became and how people imagine the sky. Chapter 4: The Pyramids and the Power of the Stars. We now glide forward, slowly and softly, toward the great stone silhouettes that have held human wonder for millennia. Imagine standing on cool sand as dawn washes the horizon in pale gold. In front of you, the pyramids rise like patient mountains shaped by human hands, angles clean against the morning sky, edges catching light in a way that makes the whole structure seem to breathe. There is a hush here, a sense of something deliberate and immense. These are not merely tombs, they are statements in stone, careful, measured, and, to many, coded with meaning that reaches beyond this world. When we speak of the pyramids, our minds most often reach toward the Giza Plateau, where the Great Pyramid stands with a calm, almost mathematical presence. Look at its sides, consider their precise orientation to the cardinal points, and notice the lines of sight that tie the structure to the heavens. To ancient builders, the sky was a map, a calendar, and a mirror. The stars were more than decorations. They were instruments for timekeeping, for ritual, and for the guiding of architecture. The idea that the pyramids were built to reflect or honor the heavens is not fanciful. It is woven into ancient cosmologies. Yet when we examine the degree of their astronomical alignment and the level of geometric precision, a question slips into the quiet. How did builders, with the tools of their era, achieve such remarkable accuracy? Take a breath and imagine the labor that shaped those blocks. Thousands of hands, controlled forces, and an intimate knowledge of stone and leverage. Now imagine too that some of the decisions, orientation, proportional ratios, internal cavities, serve not only ritual purposes but also a broader function. What if the pyramid, at its most ambitious, was designed to interface with forces the builders observed in the sky? The thought is gentle yet profound. Structures as both temples and instruments, built to receive, channel, or mark celestial energy. The ancient astronaut viewpoint allows us to hold that possibility without discarding the human skill at its core. The Great Pyramid's interior is composed of chambers and passageways that guide movement and light in very specific ways. Consider how shafts, angles, and voids can affect acoustic resonances, thermal flows, and the passage of sunlight on certain days of the year. It is not far-fetched to imagine that ancient architects observed patterns, light at certain angles, shadows that align on particular dates, and encoded those observations into their monuments. Yet there are whispers among some explorers and commentators that go beyond the visible. that speak of chambers still uncharted, of spaces with unusual geometry, of materials and fittings that suggest an intention to transmit or concentrate energy. Listen with soft curiosity to a few of these ideas. One possibility is that key monuments served as astronomical markers or beacons, places that could relay information across long distances by aligning with stars or by reflecting lights in coordinated ways. Another idea suggests that certain structures were tuned to natural electromagnetic or acoustic phenomena, perhaps exploiting underground cavities, mineral veins, or the geometry of stone to create focused effects. Some engineers and independent researchers, examining the scale and finish of certain blocks, have admitted to a feeling of puzzlement. How could such precise cuts and alignments be achieved with seemingly simple tools? Their wonder does not deny human ingenuity. It asks whether the builders had access to techniques or templates that are no longer part of our living toolkit. There is also the enduring fascination with alignment to conspicuous constellations. From one perspective, the mapping of Orion's belt onto the layout of certain pyramids feels poetic, almost like a city lifted and pinned to a heavenly diagram. To those who read patterns deeply, the repetition of celestial motifs across disparate sites suggests an intentionality that goes beyond local tradition. When pyramids in different places echo the stars, the question expands. Were these correspondences spiritual metaphors, a way for cultures to claim kinship with the cosmos, or traces of knowledge connected across regions by travellers, traders, or even visitors from afar? Now, let us sit for a moment with a quieter image. A night watchman on the plateau, his sandals muffled by sand, his breath warm in the cool air. Above him, the stars wheel in silent order. He notices how a starry alignment falls along a particular ridge at a certain season, and he learns to time planting, rituals, or construction to those moments. That human attention to rhythm becomes institutionalized, and a generation later, architects and priests collaborate to fix those rhythms in stone. Whether the resulting structures are purely human inventions or the fruit of an outside lesson, they become enduring anchors for culture. We must also gently consider the engineering itself, the block sizes, the straightness of joints, and the methods of levelling over vast areas. Many modern engineers, looking at the precision of ancient masonry, express admiration and a kind of quiet incredulity. They point to the tolerances achieved in some places and wonder how these were reached with copper tools and wooden rollers. The ancient astronaut perspective invites us to imagine that either those techniques were far more sophisticated than commonly believed, or that knowledge, perhaps in the form of plans, instruments, or direct guidance, played a role in accelerating the limits of what could be achieved at the time. Yet even as we explore these possibilities, it is important to remain tender and honest about what we do not know. The record is fragmentary. Time is a long filter. Stones have weathered, and human intention can be ambiguous. The temptation to fill gaps with neat narratives is strong. Here, the peaceful path is to collect the textures, the alignments, the craftsmanship, the myths connected to the stars, and to see how, together, they form a pattern that invites further attention. Before we close this chapter, let us touch upon a quieter, almost lyrical idea. That of the pyramid as a memory device. Stone holds stories. A monument that faces a particular star at a particular season is also a mnemonic for ritual and for communal memory. The shape itself, pushing upwards, embodies a reaching toward the heavens, a physical prayer. Whether guided by terrestrial architects alone or shaped by something beyond, the pyramids function as bridges between ground and sky. If you're staying with me, know that later chapters will carry us from these stones to other feats, places where cutting and fitting appear almost impossibly precise, objects that hint at advanced mechanics, and oral histories that name sky teachers. There will be engineers who pause and historians who probe, and we will move through each question calmly, listening for what the evidence allows us to imagine. Take a slow, even breath now. Let the image of shadow and stone in the cooling desert settle. The pyramid's quiet geometry remains, a steady marker of human labour and perhaps of something more, an invitation to remember that we've always looked up and built something in reply. Chapter 5. The Builders of the Impossible. We move onward now, gently, toward places where stone seems to defy time and expectation. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a shoreline or a high plateau, a place where sunlight slides over great flat faces of rock. In that light you can see seams so thin they almost disappear, corners so true they throw perfect shadow lines, and joints where two blocks meet like the pages of a well-bound book. These are the places that make us pause and listen. They are the works that invite us to consider not only who built them, but how, and whether the how holds secrets beyond the reach of ordinary explanation. Think about Pumapunku, a high Andean complex of terraces and platforms where the stones are cut with such geometric clarity that the surfaces catch the sun and appear polished. The blocks interlock with precision. Complex dovetail shapes suggest an intent not just to stack, but to engineer. Walk in your mind across the courtyard of Baalbek where the foundations support megaliths of monumental size. Imagine stepping beside stones so massive that moving them with ropes and levers sounds like an impossible story in a whispered nursery tale. Visualize Nan Madol, where coral and basalt are set into artificial islets, an oceanside city built upon rhythm and careful placement, where the sea laps at walls that somehow resisted the slow violence of waves and time. When modern engineers view these sites, many speak in quiet tones of admiration and sometimes of puzzlement. They examine cut faces and lifting marks, the way stone was dressed and fitted, and they feel a respectful bewilderment at the tolerances achieved. There are accounts, anecdotal, sincere accounts, from stonemasons who run their hands across a joint and find it so fine that a thin blade barely passes between the blocks. There are engineers who, trained in steel and tolerance, pause when faced with a surface that seems to have been ground or shaped with a degree of uniformity beyond what the conventional tools of the time would easily allow. Their words not flamboyant, they are the quiet, careful language of people accustomed to material limits. They look, they measure, and they sometimes say, "I don't yet see the whole story." How might such feats have been accomplished? The comfortable answers point to ramps, hundreds of workers, ingenuity and leverage, stone-on-stone sliding with lubricated surfaces, and the slow accumulation of craft. These are not to be dismissed. People were clever, patient, and capable of remarkable coordination. Yet when blocks weigh hundreds of tons, or when cuts show angles and drill holes that look microscopically precise, the comfortable answer frays at the edges and new possibilities drift into view. Let us explore a few of those possibilities with a calm, imaginative curiosity. One idea is that lost mechanical systems, technology ancestral builders used, but that did not survive into later toolkits, once existed. Simple machines can be surprisingly powerful when used in clever combinations and with deep knowledge. Workers might have used counterweights, earthen ramps that were later removed, or ingenious jigs that allowed precise placement. Another idea imagines the use of fluids and carefully shaped wooden sledges. Ancient engineers might have exploited seasonal water, ice, or even slick plant oils to reduce friction, moving larger blocks than we suppose possible. Yet another possibility turns to acoustics and resonance. There are traditions that link sound to the movement of objects, and in theory, resonant frequencies can affect materials in subtle ways. To be clear, the idea that ancient people used sound to levitate stones is speculative, but in the soft imagination of this hypothesis, such concepts are not absurd. They're invitations to think beyond the box of received assumptions. There are also stories, some recorded, some whispered, of stone cuts so exact that modern tools seem the only plausible answer. The edges are square, the grooves are uniform, and the surfaces sometimes appear polished in a way that seems to imply an abrasive far finer than sand. When contemporary craftsmen are given the opportunity to reproduce similar finishes using ancient methods, the process is slow, painstaking, and often imperfect. This contrast fuels another line of thought. Perhaps some of these surfaces were produced with instruments or techniques that are no longer known, devices that could cut or ablate stone cleanly, maybe using heat, pressure, or some other physical principle. The ancient astronaut perspective suggests that such instruments could have been taught, lent, or installed by visiting hands that had experience transforming material at scale. There are also whispered accounts of quarrying methods that elude easy replication. Some quarries bear marks that suggest splitting along planes with unusual regularity, or hollowed sockets precisely formed to receive corresponding blocks. Where a modern mason sees the hallmark of a template or an industrial saw, an ancient observer might have rendered the same effect with a ritualized technique handed down as secret knowledge. The secrecy of craft is a human norm. Apprentices learned, masters guarded methods, and the loss of a lineage can mean the loss of wonder. Yet across continents we sometimes see forms repeated with uncanny similarity, as though a common set of instructions or principles travelled, perhaps in the hands of human teachers, perhaps guided from elsewhere. It is gentle to add a human vignette here. Picture a modern stonemason invited to a remote site. He wipes his hands on a rag, traces a joint with fingers roughened by decades of work, and then stands back. He says nothing at first. Then, with a soft chuckle or a quiet sigh, he speaks of respect for the hands that once worked here, and of the humility of trying to replicate such skill. His wonder is not that ancient people were supernatural, but that they were patient, exacting, and possessed of a craft that modern times do not always keep. For those who hold the ancient astronaut view, the mason's humility converts into a hint. What if some of that craft was taught by beings who had a different body of knowledge? What if some of those hands once worked under instruction that included methods unfamiliar to the human lineage that followed? We should also consider cultural motives. Powerful rulers often commissioned the seemingly impossible as a way of expressing authority. A king might have sought to erect a monument that communicates control over both people and cosmos. The involvement of visitors from above would amplify royal power in mythic terms, aligning a ruler with the sky and its agents. A narrative where the leader receives knowledge from the heavens provides both legitimacy and a sacred story that cements social order. In this sense, extraordinary architecture becomes both technical achievement and political theology, and its techniques might be guarded as royal secrets. Let us allow, too, the notion of experimental archaeology as a humble laboratory of possibility. Modern teams sometimes attempt to replicate ancient feats using period-appropriate tools. Their experiments teach us much, that with enough coordinated labour and clever engineering, many things can be achieved. Yet they also reveal limits and costs. Massive projects require resources and time, and certain tolerances remain hard to replicate without mechanised assistance. Those limits, in the gentle imagination of the Ancient Astronaut Hypothesis, leave room for an external influence, perhaps a direct intervention, perhaps an assisted design, perhaps a fleeting collaboration between human skill and advanced know-how. As we let these ideas settle, consider the simplest human response: awe. The builders of the impossible invite us to feel small in the best possible way, not diminished, but connected to a lineage of hands that worked, planned, measured, and believed. Whether those builders were solely human in ingenuity or aided by strangers from the sky, their stone endures as a record of careful intent. It is a lesson in craftsmanship and in the ways humans respond when faced with the immensity of material and meaning. Now, as we prepare to move to the next chapter, gently hold the image of stone and hand, the mason's palm sliding across a perfect seam, the engineer's calipers finding a tolerance that insists on attention. Let that quiet image carry you onward into further wonders, where machines of legend and ancient blueprints await, where stories of flying devices and impossible fits coalesce into a larger rhythm of possibility. Chapter 6. The Flight of the Vimanas. Let us drift now into a warm, slow breeze of stories that come from the Indian subcontinent, where myth and mechanic sit side by side in long poems and careful treatises. Picture a courtyard at dusk, the scent of jasmine and sandalwood in the air, and the low murmur of elders recounting tales that span generations. In those stories, the sky is not merely a backdrop. It is a road, a theatre, and sometimes a workshop. Here the word Vimana arrives like a soft bell, a flying palace, a chariot of the gods, a metal craft that moves through clouds with a roar or a whisper, depending on how the tale is told. We will move slowly through these accounts, listening for detail and texture, and letting each line settle before the next arrives. The Mahabharata and other ancient epics carry passages that read, to patient ears, like descriptions of vehicles that fly. They speak of Vimanas that ascend with a trail of smoke or flame, of pilots who navigate the sky with skill, and of battles fought with beams and explosions that leave scars on the landscape. Some verses describe the inside of a Vimana, rooms, seats, controls of a kind, and the sensations of travel, the shifting light, the pressure of ascent, the hush of arrival. These images, vivid and repeated in multiple sources, create a tapestry that suggests more than mere metaphor for some listeners. Their memories woven with ritual and the imagination of craft. There is also the Vaimanika Shastra, a text claimed by some to contain detailed descriptions and even blueprints of flying machines. Whether it was composed as a modern forgery, a medieval compilation, or an ancient manual depends on who is telling the story. Its language, diagrams, and technical-sounding passages have fueled fascination for decades. Within its imagined pages are diagrams of multi-craft configurations, propulsion ideas that sound like fuels and controlled airs, and lists of materials and measurements. Read gently. These writings offer a conceptual world where flight is known and ordinary enough to be catalogued. To many, the heterodoxy of such texts is precisely what makes them compelling. They suggest that knowledge of aeronautics existed in some form long before the modern era. Now, breathe slowly and imagine the Vimana in the sky. A glossy hull catching sunlight, instruments glittering, a pilot, perhaps priest, perhaps scientist, perhaps both, adjusting knobs or levers that are described in terms that blend ritual and precision. In some stories, the craft is luminous, propelled by an internal flame or engine, described as moving silently or with a thunderous sound that could stir the earth. In other stories, the fuel is described as a rarer energy, a bright stone, a concoction, an ether, words that tempt the modern mind toward ideas of unknown technologies. Whether those words map onto literal fuels or poetic metaphors, they perform the same work. They encode a memory of something that moved through the sky with intent and purpose. There are oral testimonies and regional legends that further colour these images. In small villages, older families sometimes recall elders who swore that, in their youth, bright craft moved across the hills, or that objects fell from the sky and were recovered by villagers. These accounts are humble and particular, a scrap of metal kept in a household long after its meaning was forgotten, a fragment of strange alloy found under a boulder and wrapped as a keepsake. They are not formal evidence in the academic sense, but they are threads in a larger cloth of cultural memory. When many such threads run parallel, the pattern is worth noticing. The twilight of colonial history adds another layer of rumour and intrigue. There are persistent stories, fragmentary, sometimes contradictory, about expeditions and collections made by colonial officers, engineers and naturalists who, while cataloguing artefacts, reported seeing or hearing of unusual metals, carved plates with strange schematics, or even hastily packed crates forwarded to far-off museums. Some whispers suggest that British officers transcribed local oral accounts and put them into safekeeping. Others hint at reports that never reached wide circulation. In the mid-20th century, as the world's attention turned to new orders and old secrets, more speculative tales emerged, that wartime expeditions or exploratory teams in the Himalayas or in remote plateaus encountered relics of aircraft-like devices and quietly removed them for study. These stories enter our documentary as gentle rumours, never decisive proof, but evocative echoes that draw the imagination toward the possibility that physical traces of ancient flight might have been found and set aside. There are also darker rumours, whispered with the creak of secrecy, that certain regimes in the 20th century, fascinated by possibilities, sought out forgotten knowledge or artifacts to study for their own purposes. Stories connecting the German interest in exotic engineering to expeditions in the East feed the imagination. Some versions say that artifacts were catalogued, sketched, and then quietly transferred across borders. Again, these are rumours that drift in the looser currents of history. They are the kind of stories passed along in half-remembered library notes, in wartime dossiers, and in the private reports of adventurers. We listen to them as part of the mood of this investigation, neither credulous nor dismissive, simply attentive to how such stories shape public curiosity and the desire to find a material root for myth. Let us, for a calm moment, consider the idea of a recovered relic. Imagine a small panel of metal, etched with repeated symbols, its edges worn but its geometry precise. A curious engineer in a provincial workshop holds it up to the light and finds micro drill holes, a patterned grid, or a composition that resists easy alloy analysis. The engineer tests the piece, reports his puzzlement, and files the result away. To the villagers, the panel's a talisman. To the engineer, it is a problem. To historians, it is a missing report. Each perspective is human and partial. Together they create a sense of something both present and elusive. The Vimena narrative also contains accounts of aerial combat, where forces exchange strange weaponry. One passage speaks of a light that expands and consumes, another of an invisible force that disintegrates. These descriptions, when read with modern ears, echo elements of technology we now possess. Beam-like effects, directional energy, rapid ignition. But it would be careless to draw one-to-one parallels. The ancients wrote with metaphors that matched their world, yet the resemblance is striking enough to invite reflection. Could a culture preserve, in poetic language, a real memory of conflict involving advanced craft? It is a possibility that sits gently on the edge of our inquiry. How might such knowledge have spread? Within the imaginal map of ancient contact, there are many routes. Traders and travellers can carry ideas as deftly as spices. Priests and scribes can translate practical instruction into ritual form. It is easy to see how a Vimana, whether as real craft or as a composite of many aerial phenomena, could imprint itself on a culture and then be retold with growing detail over centuries. the instruction for building, flying, or maintaining such craft could be ceremonialized into texts and guarded by lineages, kept in secrecy and taught only to initiates. As we drift toward the edge of this chapter, allow a small tether forward. Later, we will sit with myths more broadly, stories of hybrid beings and watchers, of giants and hidden skeletons, which many link back to the same era in which flying machines are said to have operated. We will meet tribes who say their people were taught by Sky Ones, and we'll listen to how those claims interweave with tales of the Vimanas. For now, let the image of the flying palace hang like a lantern in the dusk, a craft of poetry and possible engineering, a vehicle that threads ritual and technical description, a memory that asks us to widen our ideas of what ancient peoples could imagine and perhaps build. Take a slow breath. Feel the hush of evening, the distant chirp of crickets, and let the image of the Vimana settle. The sky has always been a place of passage and of questions, and tonight we've only begun to trace a path across its long history. Chapter 7. The Watchers and the Nephilim. Breathe in slow and even as we move into a quieter, more intimate corner of this story, one where myth and flesh seem to meet, and where the line between heaven and earth blurs into a single, breath-held moment. Tonight we will sit with an old and powerful set of images, watchers descending from the sky, unions between beings of different orders, and the giants, called by some the Nephilim, that appear in stories and in rumour alike. These are images that have haunted the edges of many traditions for millennia. Listen now as if the story were being told beside a low fire, the flames making slow, familiar noises, while the voice unfolds with patience. In several ancient texts there is a motif of watchers, beings who watch over the human world from above, who sometimes step down and engage directly with human life. The Book of Enoch, preserved in various traditions, paints the Watchers as hybrid figures of duty and transgression, celestial custodians who taught arts and secrets, and who, in some versions of the tale, crossed boundaries that later traditions called forbidden. The same contours of story, divine visitors, instruction, intimate contact, appear in different words across cultures. In Genesis there is a short, striking line. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. It is a phrase that has sparked centuries of wonder. Who were these Nephilim? The word has been translated as giants, mighty ones, or renowned heroes. Whatever the label, the image is memorable. Beings of unusual size and power whose existence left a mark on human memory. The cadence of the stories is similar in many places. A being from above arrives as a teacher. A period of learning and social change follows. Then, in some tellings, intimate unions occur. Unions that produce offspring of unusual stature or ability. These hybrid figures are often described as possessing exceptional strength, as being leaders, or as founding lineages. They are sometimes cast as the origin of sudden social orders, or as cautionary figures whose existence upsets the balance between divine and human. The narrative tension is rich. Wonder at the gifts brought, and unease at what boundaries have been crossed. Across the centuries, a string of more concrete accounts has fed the imagination of those who listen closely. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, local newspapers, antiquarian journals, and private letters sometimes mention discoveries of very large skeletons. Farmers digging in old barrows, workers levelling ground for new rail lines, and amateur collectors sometimes wrote of bones that were, in their words, not ordinary. These reports, when collected and read as a whole, form a tapestry of claims. Stories of femurs longer than thought possible, skulls with anomalous proportions, and burial contexts that defied easy categorization. Many of these reports were fleeting, recorded in local columns, and then quietly forgotten by the broader world. Yet they linger in archives and in the memory of researchers who piece together what they can from old clippings and private correspondence. It is gentle to note how these small reports resonate with other cultural memories. In Sardinia and other Mediterranean islands, there are folk tales of people of great height who lived in earlier times, a recurring human attempt to explain large megaliths and ancient tombs by placing larger people in the story. In parts of North America, 19th century newspaper notices sometimes described giant skeletons unearthed while building roads or clearing land. These accounts were written in a different era of science and journalism, one with different standards and a different appetite for sensational copy. But they persist as traces of public curiosity. Because such findings are extraordinary, they prompt extraordinary explanations. Some researchers and independent investigators have long claimed that institutions, museums, universities, or government bodies received some of these remains and then restricted access. The narratives vary. Some allege quiet cataloguing and reclassification, others suggest full removal from public records. Whatever the details, the allegations point to a larger social phenomenon. When a society encounters something that challenges its basic story about human origins, its institutions face a choice about how to integrate, explain, or sometimes set aside that anomaly. For those who study marginal histories, those choices are as interesting as the finds themselves. There are softer human stories that make the idea palpable. Imagine an elder farmer, weathered hands folded, recounting how as a youth he found a bone the size of a pillar in a ploughed field. He wrapped it in cloth, kept it in a shed for a decade, and finally in old age passed the memory to a grandson who carried the fragment to a university. The grandson returned with polite thanks and a folder that said the bone was unidentifiable and that more study would be needed. The elder never saw the bone again. Whether the bone would have matched the story of giants is unknown. What remains is the human texture, curiosity, the weight of a thing once found, and the possibility that the past sometimes resists tidy classification. Archaeological science demands rigorous standards. When bones are found, they are catalogued, radiocarbon dated, measured, and compared. Many putative giant claims dissolve under scrutiny: misidentified animal bones, exaggerated measures, or hoaxes exposed. That scientific reality is important. It keeps the inquiry honest and grounded. Yet it is also true that the record is incomplete. Not every recovered object is properly reported in a surviving archive. Not every field note endures, and not every discovery is made under calm, controlled conditions. In places where records are fragmented, rumour and partial memory can flourish, sometimes fed by genuine anomalies, and sometimes by misinterpretation. It is also worth listening to indigenous and local narratives that speak of unusually tall ancestors or of lineages born of unions between sky beings and humans. These stories are not always literal ones of bones. They can be metaphors of authority, of leaders whose stature was measured by deeds rather than height. They can also be cultural memories of a time when social distinctions were explained through mythic descent. Yet when such narratives occur alongside physical claims, when a community holds both a story of a sky teacher and an object of unusual size, the combined pattern demands attention. Let us hold an evocative image before moving onward: a low valley where, after rain, the earth softens and an old tomb collapses, revealing a stone-lined chamber. A team arrives: field archaeologists, a local leader, and a curious elder with a story. They lower lamps and find not an ordinary skeleton, but an arrangement of bones that seems larger than known human norms. The team notes the context, the associated artifacts, and then prepares samples for dating. The ledger records the find, the analyses circle in, the results will take time. In many such scenes, the tension between wonder and method is palpable. The scientific process is patient, the imagination is swift. The Watchers and the Nephilim as a theme also open a broader question about boundaries between human and divine, mortal and immortal, known and unknown. For some traditions, these boundaries are porous and productive. Contact with a higher order brings gifts and knowledge. For others, such mixing is dangerous, a story of hubris and collapse. The Ancient Astronaut Hypothesis reads the motif of the Watchers as perhaps more literal, that beings with different bodies and different lifespans once interacted with humans, and that such interactions could have produced offspring whose traces echo in both story and, possibly, in the bones they left behind. As we move forward in our tale, know that these images will reappear in later chapters, connected to ideas of hidden archives, to the suppression or misplacement of dangerous knowledge, and to modern whistleblowers who claim insiders have seen relics that challenge orthodox narratives. We will listen to those claims with care, always mindful of the line between documented evidence and compelling rumour. The goal is not to close the story with a declaration, but to let the pattern cohere enough for you to carry a shaped possibility into the next hour of your sleep. Take a long, calm breath and let the night settle around this image of watchers and giants, the sense that our past contains outsized figures, that memory sometimes becomes myth, and that the earth may still hold traces of a time when heaven and human blood met. The question remains soft. What would such mixing mean for how we see ourselves? It is a question we will carry forward gently into what comes next. Chapter 8. The Hidden Knowledge of the Dogon. Breathe in slowly and let your attention fold inward as we move now to a small, resilient people whose stories travel like soft echoes across the Sahel. Imagine dusty paths and flat-roofed homes gathering around a central courtyard. Imagine the cool night air after a long day's heat, and the low murmur of elders who speak in measured phrases, passing memory from hand to hand. This is the landscape of the Dogon, a community whose oral traditions have long held a place of fascination for those who listen closely. Their tales are full of star beings, watery ancestors, and a precise cosmology that maps the night sky onto sacred ritual. Tonight we'll sit with their words and with the gentle puzzle they present. A people who, for reasons that invite careful thought, seem to have known more about certain stars than we would expect given the tools of their era. The Dogon tell of the Nommo, ancestral beings who came from the sky in fish-like craft. The Nommo are teachers, bringers of order and ritual, and custodians of water and life. Their arrival is described with ceremony, the fall of the craft, the imparting of knowledge, the shaping of social laws. To Dogon elders, the stories are not metaphors alone. They are the backbone of identity, a sacred memory coded in song, dance, and masked performance. The cosmology they carry connects the visible heavens with the cycles of planting, the governance of clans, and the rhythm of ritual life. It is a living system, practical, moral, and cosmic all at once. There is a specific detail in Dogon tradition that has captured wide attention. An awareness of a companion star to Sirius, known in modern astronomy as Sirius B, a white dwarf invisible to the naked eye and detectable only with powerful telescopes. The way this knowledge appears in the Dogon account, its presence in their cosmology before modern astronomical observations became common knowledge, has been read by many as an astonishing case of preserved, precise information. French anthropologists who worked with Dogon elders in the 20th century recorded much of this material, noting the complex star lore and the rituals that encoded it. For those who study these convergences, the Dogon become a luminous example, a place where oral memory and celestial detail weave together in a way that suggests deep antiquity, and perhaps to some, outside instruction. It is gentle now to explore the ways people have tried to account for this convergence. One careful approach is to respect the Dogon voices. Their stories are not merely repositories of data, they are living moral frameworks. The Nommo are teachers who shaped social order and taught sacred knowledge, and their presence in song and masque has a function beyond describing literal events. This perspective values the integrity of indigenous knowledge on its own terms and resists reducing it solely to a problem to be solved. Another way of reading the Dogon tradition leans more toward the idea of contact. Those who favour the ancient astronaut interpretation suggest that the Nommo description of beings descending from the sky and imparting cosmic information could be a memory of actual visitations or of sustained instruction from extrasomatic teachers. In this view, details about companion stars and orbital relationships are the kinds of technical data that an advanced visitor might share. If a people were taught to observe and to codify the heavens in particular ways, their oral tradition could preserve the pattern for centuries, even when scientific tools were not widely available locally. There are also quieter theories that sit between these poles, that the Dogon could have obtained knowledge through trading networks, through contact with travellers who carried astronomical lore, or through the astute observations of a scholarly few within the community. Knowledge moves in surprising ways. Traders, pilgrims, and itinerant priests can act as channels of precise information across great distances. An object or a phrase introduced into ritual can be preserved because ritual repeats and encodes, rather than because the practical method remains alive. As we breathe calmly through these possibilities, it is important to honour a difficult truth. The history of anthropology is tangled with inequality. Early records by outsiders sometimes misread, romanticised, or oversimplified what they found. The French researchers who documented Dogon cosmology did so from within a particular era and intellectual framing. Their records help the wider world know the Dogon story, but those records are not the whole story. Dogon elders themselves have been selective about what they reveal, guarding certain rites and confiding only portions of knowledge to outsiders. That protective layering is part of why their tradition feels so rich. Some knowledge is public and woven into communal life, while other knowledge remains sacred and carefully kept. There are also tendernesses in the oral accounts that make the possibility of ancient contact feel humane rather than sensational. Picture a village gathering at night where a storyteller, voice low and steady, describes how the Nommo taught people to watch the heavens and to time their planting by the rising and setting of specific stars. The people listened, learned, and then wove those lessons into masques, dances, and the measures of their months. In that way, the knowledge becomes embodied. It is not merely data to store away, but a practice that shapes everyday life. The idea that a teacher, human or otherwise, could give such practical information and watch it become living ritual is a comforting, credible pathway for how advanced knowledge might persist in an oral culture. Whispers also circulate beyond the village, accounts that hint at curious encounters between the Dogon and early modern observers. Some stories suggest that European explorers brought interpretations that reframed Dogon descriptions in astronomical language. Others hold that the Dogon accounts predate such contact. For those following the ancient astronaut thread, this ambiguity is fuel for hope. The Dogon might preserve a memory unbroken by colonial exchange, a living testament to sky teachers whose instruction included precise celestial knowledge. For For those who prefer a more conservative reading, the story is a cautionary tale about the ease with which cross-cultural contact can blur origins. As we draw this chapter to a close, let us rest with a soft, vivid image. A masked dancer moving under a sky that glows with a faint smear of the Milky Way, elders rhythmically chanting the names of stars while children mimic the gestures. In that moment, sky and earth fold together, and knowledge becomes a slow, embodied conversation between the heavens and a people who listen. Whether the Nommo arrived in craft or as potent mythic presences, the Dogon tradition teaches us something gentle and essential, that knowledge, once given, can become part of a people's breath, shaping how they plant, pray, and pass the night stories on. In the chapters ahead, we will meet other communities whose stories nod towards celestial teachers. We will look at maps, at artifacts, and at whispered archives that claim to keep similar knowledge. For now, let the Dogon spring in your mind, masked, ceremonial, and wide-eyed toward the stars, an example of how a people can become custodians of a sky memory that persists across generations. Chapter 9: Alien Blueprints in Lost Civilizations. Breathe in slowly and let your mind drift like a small boat on an endless calm sea, as we turn now to places and names that have long lived in the human imagination: Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. These words arrive soft and heavy together, like shells pulled from a deep shore. They are myths, they're maps of longing, and for many they are also a repository of questions. What if these were not only stories but memories of real places? Places where knowledge once gathered, and from which that knowledge was carried outward when the waters rose or the world changed. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a city unlike any you have walked before. Its wharves are wide and sheltered, its streets glow faintly as dusk falls. Its columns reflect a light that seems to come not only from torches, but from within the stone itself. Imagine terraces planted with crops you do not yet know, and workshops where instruments are tuned to catch the sound of the wind. In some tales, these cities are described as luminous at night, lanterns of a kind that hum with a gentle power. In others, gateways of stone open at precise times, frames aligned to the movement of stars that act as doors between seasons, or perhaps, in a more literal imagining, gates between worlds. Those who explore the ancient astronaut possibility suggest that such places, if they existed, could have been colonies or bases, settlements founded or aided by visitors from the sky. Imagine beings who arrived aboard craft, taught the first principles of metallurgy, astronomy, and more advanced civil organization, and then left behind blueprints, knowledge encoded in monuments, in symbols, and in a craft of living that the survivors could pass on. When catastrophe came, flood, fire, sea rise, refugees carried what they could. They scattered across shorelines and valleys, becoming seed bearers of technique and story. In time, their knowledge took root in new soils, flowering into temple building in one place, calendar keeping in another, and the careful dressing of stone in yet another. Think of it like this. A single harbour town of artisans and scholars collapses under water, but its apprentices and captains escape to distant lands. They bring with them methods of shaping stone, a knowledge of aligning stone to star cycles, and stories of travelling lights that are repeated and adapted by the peoples they join. Over generations, those stories ossify into myth, but practical skills remain as living practices, new crafts, new ways of measuring the sky, new formulas for technology hidden in ceremonial language. This is a gentle, plausible mechanism for how advanced ideas might seed different cultures without leaving a single, unambiguous trace. There are echoes of this pattern all across the world, Flood myths pile up like driftwood in many cultures. The tale of drowning cities appears in far-flung islands and river plains. Some of these stories are clearly metaphorical. They speak to renewal, to wiping the slate and starting anew. But the repetition of certain motifs, cities of light, teachers from the sky, gates that open with the stars, keeps the imagination awake. Could these be cultural fingerprints of a shared event or a shared technology? The Ancient Astronaut perspective says, possibly. It asks us to view myths not only as symbols but as vessels that might carry technical memory across centuries. Now imagine, with soft curiosity, how such knowledge would be preserved. Disciplines we now separate, astronomy, engineering, ritual, were once deeply entangled. A priest who mapped the stars was also the keeper of planting seasons. A builder who had a secret method for carving stone might also be the custodian of a ritual that masked technical instruction in symbolic language. This packaging is brilliant in its simplicity. Hide practical know-how in myth so it survives social upheaval and remains accessible to those initiated into the tradition. In this way, a method for precise stone cutting, a memory of how to align a monument to Orion, or a recipe for a curious alloy could travel across continents wrapped in story. There are small human tales that make the theory feel close at hand. Picture an old navigator on a rocky shore. The map he carries faded but still bearing curious notations that match no known script, a record of a star route his grandfather swore to have followed. He explains quietly how his family has always kept the course, how they trust a certain light that appears at a season's turning. The navigator's route might later be echoed in another people's legend of a light that guided boats to safe harbours. Over time, these echoes become patterns that archaeologists and myth lovers trace, similarities in ritual, in monument placement, in flood stories, that suggest a deep shared history. We will not pretend that this story offers simple proof. Much of it rests on pattern recognition, on the attentive gathering of parallels, and on the willingness to accept that not all historical knowledge leaves neat, preservable traces. Yet when we weave together the architecture of pyramids, the descriptions of flying machines, the traditions of sky teachers, and the myths of lost cities, a coherent tapestry forms, one that suggests a world in which knowledge was once more widely shared than our current maps show. There are also hints that survivors of such cataclysms might have formed new settlements, intentionally designed to function as living libraries, places where knowledge could be compressed into ritual, art, and building so it would survive droughts, invasions, and sea changes. In this view, Egypt's temple craftsmen, the stone masons of the Andes, and the pyramids of Mesoamerica might all be in part expressions of that same heritage, local adaptations of a shared blueprint, tuned to different landscapes and cultural needs. When we stand before these monuments, we can feel not a single origin, but a family of techniques and stories that echo across oceans, as though a forgotten curriculum once taught a range of people how to shape the world in particular ways. And then there is the evocative image of sky gates, stone portals aligned to the passage of specific stars. These are not merely metaphors in this hypothesis. They may have functioned as navigation aids for aerial or sea craft, as markers for rituals timed to stellar cycles, or as mnemonic devices for complex itineraries. Imagine a sailor or pilot approaching a coastline and seeing a sequence of standing stones that, when viewed in a particular order, direct a course or calibrate an instrument. The idea softens when we imagine those gates as part of a living map, an ancient network of instruction that worked both on the ground and in the air. As you rest with these thoughts, know that the next chapters will take us from these speculative blueprints into tangible artifacts, objects like intricate gears, curious batteries, and precise drill holes that press against our ideas of what ancient hands could do. We will listen to engineers who examine such artifacts and historians who trace their threads across time. For now, let the image of a luminous city, its refugees carrying secret techniques to new shores, and the gentle notion of sky gates guide you toward a sense of deep, connected possibility. That knowledge has always moved in unexpected ways, and that perhaps somewhere beneath waves and soil traces remain of an older, more cosmic instruction. Chapter 10. The Ancient Energy Grid. Breathe slowly and let the world narrow to a single, attentive point as we turn our attention to an idea that feels like a soft map beneath the skin of the earth. A hidden web of power and meaning that connects monuments, temples, and megaliths into a subtle lattice. Imagine tracing a line on a map with a fingertip and discovering that when you follow it, pyramids, stone circles, and ancient sanctuaries appear like beads on a string. Hold that image gently. That is the essence of what some call the Ancient Energy Grid, a network of sites that, when viewed together, suggest intentional geometry, long-range planning, and perhaps a shared knowledge of the Earth's subtle properties. Start with a single monument in the quiet of an early morning, a temple whose foundation stones fit together with a care that suggests both ritual and measurement. Now lift your gaze to another hill, across a valley or a sea, where another structure stands aligned in a way that is not random. Lines drawn in imagination reveal alignments, sight lines that point to solstices, to lunar standstills, or to particular stars. When researchers and map lovers begin to draw these lines across continents, patterns emerge: triangles, circles, grids whose nodes are ancient sites. For some, this is an aesthetic curiosity. For others, it is evidence of a deliberate system that ancient builders used to orient themselves in the world. The idea of ley lines, straight tracks connecting sacred places, was popularized in modern times, but the deeper notion here is not merely romantic geography. It is the possibility that ancient peoples observed certain natural phenomena, magnetic anomalies, nodal points of geology, or persistent atmospheric behaviors, and chose their sacred sites with an eye to those qualities. Imagine that certain places hum with a subtle physical difference: unusual mineral deposits, underground chambers that modulate resonant frequencies, or confluences of subterranean water that change the electrical behavior of soils. Human beings, attentive and practical, would notice such places. They would remember them, arrange rituals there, and build structures that amplified the effect. Over centuries, those choices become fixed as sacred nodes on a larger grid. Consider what it would mean to have a global or continental network of such nodes. In practical terms, a grid can function as a navigational map, a set of markers that travelers, sailors, and later pilgrims use to orient themselves. It can also function as an energetic system. If certain sites amplify, store, or direct natural energies, then aligning monuments along coordinated bearings could, in theory, create corridors where those energies could be channeled or sensed. Within the Ancient Astronaut framework, the idea is that visitors with an understanding of such phenomena might have shown human communities how to tune their monuments into a larger system, an instruction that would be both practical and ritual, technical and symbolic. There are quieter, tangible traces that invite curiosity. In various places, the geometry of monuments is strikingly precise. Circles placed at particular distances, alignments that form consistent angular relationships, and repeated ratios that appear in the spacing of sites. When cartographers and amateur investigators overlay global maps, they sometimes find surprising coincidences. The same great circle alignments that cross oceans and link sacred sites. Whether these are intentional or statistical curiosities is a matter of debate, but the pattern, when it appears repeatedly, is too poetic to ignore. It urges us to ask, who noticed these alignments first, and why were they important? Think of the landscape as an instrument that can be tuned. Certain rock formations resonate when struck. Underground caverns produce unique acoustic signatures. Some mineral seams concentrate piezoelectric effects. If ancient builders had ways of measuring or feeling these qualities, through ritual practice, empirical observation or instruction, they might have placed key monuments to take advantage of them. A temple located at a node of acoustic resonance could be used to amplify sound for ceremony. A platform aligned to a magnetic anomaly might aid orientation for long-distance travel. A cluster of stones placed to catch a seasonal solar alignment could serve both as a calendar and as a transmitter of cultural knowledge. We must be gentle and clear about the evidence. The archaeological record is complex and often ambiguous. Many alignments can be explained by geography, ritual need, or independent invention. Human beings are pattern-seeking. Our minds draw lines where none were intended as easily as they find meaning where it exists. Yet the hypothesis is not merely a game of connecting dots. It is a robust way of reading multiple kinds of data together: geometry, geology, oral tradition, and the recurring practical needs of agriculture, navigation, and communal ritual. When these streams cohere, the grid hypothesis becomes a plausible structure for further inquiry rather than a mere fanciful overlay. There are gentle stories that make the grid feel human. Imagine an ancient navigator who follows a chain of standing stones along the coast as a lanternless pilot follows a row of buoys. Each stone marks a safe approach. Each alignment indicates a place to land or to rest. Over generations, the stones are replaced, their meanings ritualized, and a map that began as utilitarian becomes mythic. In another scene, imagine an initiatory complex where apprentices learn both to cut stone and to read the land, how to feel a river's pull, how to notice the angle of a rising star against a mountain top. That dual training, practical and sacred, creates the kind of durable knowledge that could shape a grid remembered for centuries. The energy grid idea also invites a different kind of humility, that ancient people were deeply observant of the planet, not merely passive participants in it. They noticed seasons, magnetism, animal migrations, and the specific behaviors of rocks and water. They encoded that awareness into monuments and ritual. If visitors from the sky aided in that encoding, their contribution would be less about miracle and more about discipline, organized perception taught across generations. Before we move on to the next chapter, imagine a night when several communities, each at a node on this grid, light ritual fires in a synchronized pattern. They mark time by a star that crosses the horizon in a precise place, and they pass messages by signal and kite, by smoke and reflection. From the vantage of the sea, the landscape glows in a rhythm that transmits meaning, a living, breathing map. The idea is poetic, yes, but poetry often hides practical instruction. Whether or not the grid was designed explicitly as an energy system, its existence as a network of carefully chosen, culturally significant places tells us something essential. Ancient people shared an intimate relationship with the earth and sky, and they structured their environments to embody that relationship. In the chapters ahead, we will explore artifacts that might have been nodes in this network, objects that encode knowledge of motion, electricity, precision engineering, and maybe even materials we would now call advanced. We will listen to the stories of those who claim to have found maps and relics that fit into the grid. For now, hold the image of the softly connected world, stones like notes on a staff, monuments like instruments tuned to the subtle music of the planet, and a human lineage that learned to read and shape that music in ways we're only beginning to appreciate. Chapter 11: Advanced Technologies Hidden in Plain Sight. Breathe in slowly and let the room soften around you as we move closer to objects, small things that seem almost too curious to be real. These are artifacts and fragments that sit quietly in museums, drawers, and sometimes in private collections. They look ordinary at first: a corroded gear, a clay jar, a bit of drilled stone. But when scholars and craftsmen study them closely, their ordinary surfaces can open into extraordinary questions. Tonight we will let those objects speak in close detail, tracing how a few remarkable finds have caused thoughtful people to pause and wonder whether traces of advanced technology survived in ancient hands. Begin with the image of a deep-sea diver returning to the surface, the air breathing heavy through his suit, his arms full of rusted metal shapes pulled from a shipwreck. The sea gives up its secrets slowly, and among the detritus of a vessel are gears and wheels, rings within rings, so delicately engineered that they fit like clockwork. One such device, studied by scholars and tinkering hands, reveals a mechanism designed to calculate celestial motions with astonishing accuracy. The complexity is not merely decorative. It functions as a recorder of cycles, an analog calculator that anticipates positions of the sun, moon, and planets. To scholars, the device is an heirloom of precise observational astronomy and mechanical genius. To those who trace an older thread of knowledge, it is a whisper that people of antiquity encoded complex mathematical models into mechanisms much earlier than expected. Hold that image, and then shift gently to a different table where a small clay pot sits. Inside, a narrow cylinder appears to have been used in a way that suggests electrical experimentation. The pot, when examined, shows signs that some interpret as evidence of a galvanic cell, a simple battery capable of producing small electric currents. Archaeologists have debated the interpretation and the function. Some see mundane uses, others see experimental devices. The idea that ancient artisans might have produced controlled electricity invites soft speculation. What small tasks could such an energy source have enabled? Electroplating, medicinal procedures, or small lighting experiments are among the possibilities proposed by imaginative and careful thinkers alike. Whether those possibilities were realized widely or were isolated experiments, the presence of an object that could have performed electrical work nudges our curiosity and widens the range of what ancient technology could include. Now imagine a workshop where a craftsman crouches over a stone column, rotating a tool with deliberate motion while water and grit slide off the surface like a soft stream. The finish on this stone is so smooth, the drill holes so uniform and round, that modern eyes suspect the use of tools more precise than the hand tools known for the period. Some holes are deep and clean, others so narrow and regular that they resemble the output of modern metal drills. Craftsmen who try to reproduce these effects with replica tools find the work slow and the tolerances hard to reach. These detailed holes are scattered across many sites and materials, stone, metal, and even hard gemstones, suggesting a level of applied knowledge about abrasives, rotational speed, and material behavior that implies purposeful experimentation and mastery. Consider also small carvings and etchings that show an exactness bordering on microscopic. When polished and examined under magnification, their edges show tool marks consistent with steady, repeated action. And in some cases, the patterning suggests an understanding of micro-abrasive techniques that would not become common until much later. In a world where most surviving evidence is fragmentary, a handful of such objects can feel like signposts pointing toward a lost chapter of technical craft. There are softer stories attached to these objects, human stories that make the artifacts feel alive. An old conservator, bent with years of handling fragile pieces, may recall the first time she lifted such a gear and felt its weight and balance. She learned, through patient trial and error, how the teeth fit together, how the mechanism would have turned and what register it might have kept. She describes the sensation with affection, the whirring in her mind as she imagines the device moving in daylight, marking time and motion like a small, deliberate animal. For those who study these items, that tactile intimacy is part of what makes the objects persuasive. They are not merely curios, they are evidence of hands that once knew how to think mechanically and to produce fine tolerances. Sometimes the trail of objects leads to uncomfortable whispers, rumours that certain finds were quietly removed from public access, catalogued under innocuous entries, or placed in restricted archives. Whether these whispers are true depends on the case. Institutional records are complex and not every artifact gets the clarity of full publication. Yet the persistence of such stories adds to the texture of the mystery. Fragments of technology, reinterpreted, misfiled, or simply lost in the bureaucracy of preservation. That sense of missing pages in the historical ledger fuels a human desire to pull together the scattered evidence and imagine a continuous thread of technical knowledge running through antiquity. As we think about these objects, hold in your mind the considerate hum of engineering. A pair of hands matching two-gear teeth, a potter adjusting a cylinder until it fits, a mason sanding a hole until the drill runs clean. These are ordinary gestures made extraordinary by the results. When such results appear in contexts we thought unlikely for advanced mechanics, we are invited to revise what we assumed about the past. Did a culture possess experimental workshops where artisans pushed material limits? Did certain teachers, perhaps visitors, perhaps inspired locals, introduce particular methods that then spread through craft lineages? The objects alone do not answer. They only make the question more urgent and more plausible. There is also a gentle caution that runs through all of this. Not every anomalous object proves contact with strangers from the stars. Many genuine innovations arose from local brilliance and long traditions of craft. But when we place a string of such artifacts across continents, mechanisms of calculation, potential electrical cells, microscopically precise drill work, we begin to see a pattern. Patterns invite hypotheses. The ancient astronaut view reads these small machines as possible remnants of a broader technological environment, one where certain communities had access, whether by learning or by gift, to ideas and tools that allowed them to do more than we typically credit them for. Before we close this chapter, imagine a quiet room where scholars, artisans, and a curious layperson sit around a table lit by a warm lamp. On the table are the artifacts themselves: a small gear, a clay pot, a polished stone with tiny holes. They pass them around gently, feeling the cool metal, the weight, the finish. They speak in low, respectful tones about what experiments might replicate the effects, about the cultural context that could have supported such work, and about the humility required in the face of objects that arrive without a full story. That room, patient and collaborative, is the best place for our curiosity to live. In the chapters ahead, we will bring these small artifacts into conversation with larger institutions, the keepers of history who decide what to publish and what to store. We will listen to claims that archives hide inconvenient objects, and we will weigh those claims with a steady mind. For now, let the small things settle in your imagination. Gears that tracked the heavens, pots that might have held a spark, and drill holes that hint at hands both careful and inventive. These are the fingerprints of a past that may have been more technically curious and more cosmically connected than we usually allow. Chapter 12. The Vatican and the Lost Knowledge. Breathe in slowly and let the quiet of a vast ancient place settle around you. As we step mentally into corridors flickering with lamplight, lined with shelves that have held memory for centuries. Imagine a building where the hush is not only reverence but also careful stewardship. A place where scholars translate manuscripts by candlelight, where astronomers chart the sky from a rooftop observatory, and where decisions about what to reveal and what to protect are made with slow, weighty care. For many, the Vatican is precisely such a place, a centre of faith, education, and some whisper, a repository for knowledge the wider world has not yet seen. In this chapter, we'll move gently through those whispers, treating them with respect and curiosity, and listening to the kinds of stories that fuel questions about hidden archives and tools that might peer into the past. There is an old human rhythm to how institutions guard things. Libraries and archives exist because memory is fragile, documents crumble, oral traditions shift, and objects are lost. So communities create rooms with controlled humidity, catalogues, and locks. Within such rooms, under the watch of archivists and clergy, texts are catalogued, translated, and sometimes withheld for reasons both practical and doctrinal. The Vatican, with its enormous trove of manuscripts and centuries of correspondence, is a natural focus for speculation. When a single institution holds vast numbers of rare documents, from medieval letters to ancient codices, people imagine that among those folios might be accounts and artifacts that touch on the very questions we're exploring. Traces of sky visitors, strange instruments, or records of events that challenge comfortable narratives. One of the softest and most persistent stories connected to the idea of hidden knowledge in the Vatican is the tale of the chronovisor. Fold your hands and imagine an old study strewn with notes, a small team of clergy and technicians gathered around an instrument that resembles a console from a science fiction dream. The claim, voiced by a few insiders and repeated by many curious voices, is that in the mid-20th century, a group composed of priests, engineers, and scholars built a device capable of tuning into visual echoes of the past, allowing its operators to see historical events replayed in some form. The narratives detailed and strange, flickering images of long-vanished scenes, faces in thin light, and the recorded sight of a moment in antiquity, rendered with eerie clarity. Those who tell the story speak with a hush, as if the very telling risks waking something sleeping. It is important to breathe gently here, and to distinguish between evidence and rumour. The chronovisor story sits in the realm of strong anecdote, an intriguing moving claim that many cherish as a possibility, but that lacks universally accepted proof. Yet the power of the story lies not only in its literal claim, but in what it reveals about human longing, the desire to look back, to correct history, and to access truths that archives and archaeology sometimes leave only partly told. For those who find the idea compelling, it functions as an emblem of what secret knowledge might look like, an instrument that can lift the veil between past and present and show us what our ancestors actually witnessed. Beyond the chronovisor legend, there are more grounded facts that lend texture to the wider possibility of hidden knowledge. The Vatican's long institutional engagement with astronomy and scholarship. For centuries, clerics and scholars associated with the Church studied the heavens, the motion of stars, the timing of calendars, and the careful recording of celestial events. The Vatican Observatory, staffed by astronomer, priests, and academic collaborators, is a real place of study. Its scholars have contributed to the mapping of the sky and the dialogue between faith and scientific curiosity. This serious interest in astronomy makes the idea of the Vatican holding rare astronomical manuscripts or correspondence plausible, if not necessarily sensational. It also gives a credible context for how knowledge about the heavens could be studied, preserved, and sometimes discussed in ways that remain private for prudential reasons. There are human stories that make these possibilities feel near and intimate. Imagine a late-night conservator in a vast archive, the lamps forming soft islands of light among stacks. She slides a coded drawer open and finds a small wooden box wrapped in cloth. Inside lies an odd tarnished plate, its surface marked with glyphs that do not match the catalogues she knows. She carefully documents, photographs, and reports it. The object is refiled under a restricted entry and pulled for further study. Whether the plate proves to be an ancient astrolabe, a votive token, or something stranger, the conservator's memory of the moment, the sense of having brushed an uncommon history, remains. Stories like hers, told in whispers by scholars and archivists, form the connective tissue of our curiosity, a mixture of small finds, careful cataloguing, and the institutional choices that decide what becomes widely known. Why would an institution keep materials private? There are many plausible reasons that are not conspiratorial. Preservation and conservation, legal ownership questions, canonical sensitivity, and the simple need for scholarly verification before public disclosure. Some documents are withheld because they speak to delicate theological issues, others because they contain personal or diplomatic correspondence, still others because their age and fragility require study in controlled settings. But when those practical motives sit beside the weight of an immense archive, they create a fertile soil for speculation. If a document or artifact challenged a cherished historical understanding, the choice to proceed slowly could be read as prudence or as secrecy. Interpretation depends on perspective. Mixed among the archivist's stories are other testimonies, former clerics, retired staff, and occasional whistleblowers who claim to have seen items or files that suggest a deeper, more perplexing inventory. Some have described catalogues of recovered objects from archaeological digs, objects that did not easily fit known typologies. Others speak of correspondences with field teams who reported anomalous finds, and whose letters ended with suggestions to proceed with caution. For those who follow the thread, such testimonies knit together a picture of an institution that both preserves and, at times, restricts access to items whose implications might be profound. There is also the gentle idea that the Church's own priorities could make it interested in certain materials. Artifacts that speak to human origins, texts that bear on the nature of personhood, or records that intersect with doctrinal teachings. An item that suggested non-human intervention in human development would present not just scientific questions but theological ones. How would belief systems integrate such evidence? The weight of that question alone could make prudence the dominant institutional posture. That sense of caution, when overheard by outsiders, can be read as concealment. Within the institution, it is often simply the slow work of thought and care. Let us hold a softer, almost cinematic image in our mind. A marble hallway, the ticking of a distant clock, and two figures conversing in low tones. One is an aged scholar with hands like maps, the other a young archivist who has found a marginal note that matches an odd reference in an older letter. They speak in guarded wonder, aware that the wrong claim might reverberate across worlds, academic, religious, and public. They decide to verify, to test, to cross-reference. For them, secrecy is not malice but method, the deliberate postponement of claim until evidence holds. For others listening from outside, that delay becomes the seed of stories. There are also accounts, heard in the quieter corners of research communities, suggesting that artifacts recovered by governments or private teams sometimes pass through ecclesiastical hands for study or safekeeping. Whether or not this is common, the possibility opens a path where a relic with an unusual composition or engraving could end up catalogued in a library and then refiled under a benign description, awaiting interdisciplinary study. Each such step in the chain increases the time before public disclosure, and each delay feeds the imagination. As we draw this chapter to a close, breathe with me and imagine a small, shuttered room where a motley set of documents waits. A folio with star charts hand-drawn centuries ago, a heavily corrected treatise on astronomical cycles, and a note in a shaky hand that mentions a device for observing past events, a line that later readers will debate for decades. The room is ordinary: shelves, labelled drawers, and the faint scent of old paper. Yet in the way a single artifact can change a narrative, that quiet room holds possibility, an invitation to wonder, to patient study, and to the slow unfolding of evidence. In the next chapters, we will move from repositories and rumours to the institutions that sometimes resist disclosure, the great museums, universities and research centres where questions become controversies. We will listen carefully to claims of suppression, to stories of lost skeletons, and to the testimonies of those who say they once walked into a room and touched something that did not fit the story they were taught. For now, let the image of the archive remain, a place of careful light, of slow decisions, and of human hands that decide what the world will know and when. Chapter 13: The Smithsonian and the Suppression of Giants. Take a slow, grounding breath and imagine a vast museum hall, the air cool and still, where glass cases hold relics and bones, and where the steady tick of cataloguing marks the patient work of memory. Institutions like national museums carry the responsibility of stewarding objects for the public and for science. They also become lightning rods for stories when those objects or their records seem to contradict the comfortable story a society tells about itself. In this chapter, we will move slowly through a set of charged, persistent allegations, stories that have circulated for more than a century. That large humanoid skeletons were found, reported in local papers, and then quietly removed from public view, sometimes said to have passed through the doors of major institutions like the Smithsonian. We will listen to these claims with calm curiosity, weigh the human textures that make them believable, and also name the methodological realities that complicate them. Start with the environment in which many of these claims arise. The 19th century, an era of rapid expansion, railroad building, and antiquarian enthusiasm. Farmers turned soil, miners opened seams, and railway crews cut through mounds that had lain undisturbed for centuries. Local newspapers loved a sensational find. Editors printed the extraordinary, often leaning on eyewitness testimony that captured a community's amazement. In those columns appeared occasional reports of unusually large bones, sometimes measured in the crude terms of the day, an arm bone as long as a man's leg, a skull beyond ordinary size, a burial chamber with stones set for giants. These accounts, when collected across regions, formed a patchwork of claims that captured the public imagination. From those small-town reports, some threads lead to larger institutions. The Smithsonian Institution, as a prominent national repository and research centre, features regularly in stories of artefacts and remains that were sent for study. For many people, the Smithsonian functions as the canonical keeper. If something outlandish were real, the tale goes, it would pass through its doors. That notion makes the institution an obvious focal point for suspicion when items vanish from public view or when early reports are not matched by later publications. The question then becomes not only what was found, but how institutions manage uncertain evidence. It helps to slow and consider how museums actually work. Collections can swell quickly. Many items arrive unlabeled or misdescribed. Curators triage material. Some objects are prioritized for immediate study, others placed in storage pending funding, and some set aside because contextual data are lacking or the provenance is murky. Over time, cataloguing practices change. What once sat listed in a common ledger may now reside in a climate-controlled, access-restricted repository. Paper records age, inventory numbers are reassigned, and the institutional memory of why one box was set aside can fade. In this quiet administrative space, rumour sometimes finds fertile ground. An item noted in a ledger but not on display becomes in popular imagination evidence of suppression. Layered on top of administrative realities are human stories that give fuel to the claim of suppression. Families tell of boxes taken from a local homestead and shipped away. A newspaper clipping mentions a skeleton of extraordinary size found by workmen. An amateur antiquarian writes a letter to a museum asking for help, and later remembers the crate leaving town. These personal memories are powerful because they are concrete and immediate. A grandfather's tale of a bone kept in a barn is a vivid image. An old clipping in a family Bible is tangible evidence that something unusual was noticed. When official channels do not respond with clear public results, frustration accumulates and speculation grows. We must also gently consider the role of misidentification and the standards of 19th century science. Not every bone thought large by a local observer proves to be a human giant when examined by osteologists. Animal bones, mastodon ribs, large bovid femurs, or whale vertebrae can be misread by the untrained eye. Soil compression and taphonomic processes can distort burial contexts, and measurement standards at the time were inconsistent. When professional osteology is applied, radiocarbon dating, morphological comparison, stable isotope analysis, the majority of extraordinary claims tend to be reinterpreted as either natural phenomena, hurried misreporting, or outright hoaxes. This reality does not make the original experiences any less real for those who witnessed them. It only complicates the path from anecdote to accepted fact. Still, allegations of suppression are not only about mistakes, they're also about the cultural weight of anomalies, evidence that appears to upend foundational narratives about human origins, social development, or the neat line of scientific progress can provoke institutional caution. Institutions might choose verification over immediate disclosure. They might withhold premature claims until analyses are complete. They might be risk-averse for fear of scandal or misinterpretation. To outside observers inclined to suspicion, such prudence looks like concealment. To insiders, it can be the slow, careful work that science and stewardship require. There are also stories, less easy to verify, that suggest more active measures. Tales circulate of specimens that were catalogued under innocuous labels, of boxes misfiled, or of departments that declined to publish unusual finds. Some researchers point to archival letters, private correspondences, and old accession books that hint at objects no longer accounted for publicly. These archival traces matter because they reflect real moments of encounter between lay discoverers and institutional gatekeepers. The emotional texture of these traces, the disappointment of a community, the polite deferral of a curator, the fading of a ledger entry into obscurity, creates a narrative arc that invites further searching. For those who pursue these threads, modern tools offer means of testing the claims. Forensic techniques, digital catalogue searches, and renewed archival efforts can sometimes recover the paper trail. Freedom of information requests, persistent scholarship, and collaborative projects between local communities and institutions can surface documents once thought lost. In the best cases, this process clarifies misunderstandings and rebuilds trust. In others, it leaves questions that deepen curiosity. The interplay between institutional opacity and public curiosity is, in itself, a human story worth noticing. It reveals cultural anxieties about what knowledge must be controlled and who decides the official narrative. It is also tender to notice how these narratives affect people. For descendants who believe that an ancestor found something remarkable, the sense of a lost heritage can sting. For researchers, the discovery of a misplaced ledger or a mislabeled crate can be a small triumph, a chance to bring order to a chaotic archive. For institutions, the challenge is institutional humility, acknowledging the gaps in record keeping, explaining decisions, and opening opportunities for collaborative study. When museums and universities engage transparently, they often diffuse suspicion. When they do not, rumours blossom. A calm human vignette helps to close this chapter. Imagine a local historian, thinning hair catching the lamp glow, who has spent years collecting clippings from small-town papers. One evening, she brings a particular clipping to a national archive and asks for help. Together they trace the accession number to an old crate in storage. It is not a giant skeleton of mythic proportion, but it is an unusual assemblage of bones, animal remains arranged with ritual items, that tells a story about local practice. The discovery neither proves nor disproves the broader narrative of giants, but it reconnects a community with a past object and restores a missing piece of social memory. Little recoveries like this matter. They heal rifts between public memory and institutional record keeping, and they show how a curious persistence can bring clarity without spectacle. As we let this chapter rest, hold the central, gentle question in your mind. Why do stories of suppression endure? Partly because institutions are imperfect and sometimes slow, partly because human memory preserves dramatic images better than careful records, and partly because anomalies press at narratives people cherish. The possibility that large human-like remains once existed and were hidden is compelling, emotionally potent and culturally disruptive, but it remains a set of contested claims that require patient archaeology, transparency, and scientific rigor. In the chapters ahead, we will take up those demands. How modern whistleblowers and insiders frame their testimonies, how declassified documents reshape debates, and how the line between rumour and evidence is navigated by careful investigators. For now, breathe out slowly and let the image of the museum halls dissolve into night, carrying with it the sense that institutions hold both the keys and the questions of the past. Chapter 14. Modern Whistleblowers and Insider Revelations. Breathe in slowly and let the sound of my voice keep time with your breath as we step from ancient stones into the quieter, more urgent rooms of modern memory. Offices, hangars, private garages, and the grainy interviews that arrive like late-night radio signals. Tonight we will sit with voices that claim to have seen things from the inside. People who once wore uniforms, signed secrecy oaths, worked in labs, or stood in corridors where extraordinary objects were catalogued and stored. Their words carry weight because they come from the ordinary workaday world. Pilots, engineers, technicians and civil servants who speak with the calm clarity of professionals. We will listen to their testimonies with care, not to swallow every assertion as final truth, but to let the pattern of repeated claims form a texture that asks for attention. There is a tender bravery to whistleblowing. To step forward and tell a story that contradicts an official line means risking reputation, livelihood, and the quiet of ordinary life. For that reason, many who come forward do so slowly, first to a friend, then to a journalist, then in a recorded interview that feels like a confession and a release. Their narratives often share common elements. They describe astonishing objects and materials, unusual handling procedures, controlled storage areas, and layers of compartmentalization that keep different teams from knowing what their colleagues are doing. They talk about entropy in paperwork, files misfiled, inconsistent records, and an institutional habit of treating anomalies as problems to be managed rather than puzzles to be announced. In the hush between those facts, they often claim more, experiences and findings that point, sometimes quietly and sometimes boldly, toward ancient origins or recovered artifacts that do not fit the textbook. Listen now to the kind of scene many whistleblowers describe. A plane hangar lit with industrial lights, crate labels coded and bland, men and women in uniforms carrying an object beneath a tarpaulin. The object might be small, a carved plate, an oddly worked alloy, or it might be larger, its contours suggesting non-standard engineering. The workers move with procedural calm. Cameras are not permitted. A senior technician says, "Catalogue it, send a sample to the lab, await instructions." The person who later speaks to a journalist remembers the smell of oil and the chill of the crate, and the sense that the thing being handled did not fit the categories in their training manual. That human memory, precise in sensation even if fuzzy on dates, repeats across testimonies from different countries and eras, and that repetition is what gives those stories a kind of soft gravity. Among the better-known names in this field are a few who became lightning rods for public attention. Some spoke about facilities where purported recovered craft were examined. Others claimed to have been briefed about technologies that defied easy classification. The specifics vary, but the pattern persists. People with technical backgrounds reporting contact with objects or materials that challenge ordinary explanations. Their testimony is often paired with documentary fragments, memoranda, vague photos, and the occasional declassified record that suggest at least institutional interest in unusual airborne phenomena. Governments, after all, are observant creatures. When pilots report something that moves against known aerodynamic rules, or when sensors return puzzling readings, the defense apparatus takes notice. That factual institutional interest is the bedrock on which more extraordinary claims rest. Within that bedrock, there are moments of public disclosure that change the conversation, files opened, reports declassified, and official acknowledgements of programs that once operated in secrecy. These moments have a steadying influence. They show that the subject has moved from paranoid margins into channels where careful evidence can be discussed. For those who follow whistleblower testimony, such official openings offer both relief and complication. Relief, because they confirm that government attention was real. Complication, because the archives and reports rarely contain a neat, conclusive picture. Rather, they show investigations, unanswered questions, and internal debates. Then there are voices that speak of a continuity between modern UFO phenomena and ancient artifacts. Some insiders assert that certain items recovered from remote digs or from crash sites were handed into classified custody and studied under a veil of compartmentalization. Engineers who claim to have examined strange alloys describe unusual crystalline patterns, isotopic ratios that do not match known terrestrial sources, or materials that respond to forces in ways that require new theoretical frameworks to explain. Pilots who saw unusual craft in the sky sometimes describe flight characteristics that evade simple, aerodynamic analysis: abrupt changes in direction, acceleration without apparent propulsion, and signatures on radar that vanish and reappear. Taken together, these technical-sounding observations form a vocabulary, an engineer's soup of oddities that many find persuasive because it speaks in the language of instruments and measurement. It is important softly and clearly to recognize how evidence differs from claim. Not every insider has verifiable documentation. Not every document is complete or unambiguous. And not every memory resists the slow erosion of time. That is why the prudent path is the patient one. Collect testimony, seek corroboration, examine materials with transparent methods, and subject claims to the kind of skepticism that tests rather than dismisses. For listeners like you, The rhythm of this documentary is meant to be a steady invitation to hold wonder and discernment together. Feel the pull of the stories and keep gentle track of how they're supported. Alongside the technical descriptions are human confessions that read like small tragedies or acts of conscience. A technician who signed an oath might describe years of private doubt, the internal conflict between loyalty and a felt obligation to truth, and the relief of finally speaking. A retired official, speaking with a tremor in the voice, might recount late-night briefings and the surreal sensation of being shown an artifact, its surface humming in a way words can hardly catch. These testimonials are compelling precisely because they are human. The voice breaks, the hands fidget, the facts proceed haltingly, and through the pauses we hear the person behind the claim. This chapter would not be complete without noting the organised efforts to gather such testimonies, the projects and groups that invite witnesses to present what they know. These initiatives attempt to create a structure for claims, recorded testimonies, sworn statements, and catalogued evidence that can be analysed by independent scientists. For several decades, such projects have accumulated a trove of accounts, pilots' logs, maintenance records, and sworn affidavits. The existence of such repositories allows the curious and the skeptical alike to examine material in a more orderly way than rumour alone permits. As we begin to close this chapter, take a slow breath and let the weight of these testimonies settle into something like a breadcrumb trail. Small, individual pieces that taken together create a path worth following. Some breadcrumbs will prove to be false leads, others will lead to solid ground. That is the nature of investigation. Our task in this quiet journey is not to pronounce final judgment, but to gather, weigh, and hold open the possibility that the traces of ancient contact might reverberate into modern corridors of power. Later chapters will take that thread forward. We will look at archaeological rumours in Egypt and at sealed tombs. We will weigh modern genetic arguments, and we will return, in the closing chapters, to a broader synthesis that lets all these stories breathe together. For now, let the sound of the testimonies rest in your mind like a recorded whisper. Ordinary people, extraordinary claims, instruments and hangers, an adjacency of the mundane and the inexplicable that invites curiosity without haste. Hold that curiosity gently, like a small flame, and let it guide you as we prepare to move beneath the sands once more. Chapter 15. The Egyptian Connection and Hidden Tombs. Breathe in slowly and let the desert air fold around you as we return to the sands of Egypt, a place where sunlight keeps time on stone and silence holds 1,000 stories. Picture the Giza Plateau at dusk. The silhouettes of pyramids draw gentle, patient lines against a cooling sky, and the Sphinx sits, ancient and watchful, its profile worn but undeniably alive with history. This landscape feels like a hinge between human labour and the heavens, an apt place to consider the possibility that some knowledge was tucked away beneath the surface, stored in chambers, or hidden in plain sight until the right eyes and instruments found their way there. There are a few threads that tug us gently toward the idea of hidden spaces and unusual finds around Giza and other Egyptian sites. One thread is the persistent rumour, soft at first, then more insistent across decades, that beneath the plateau and under certain monuments there exist sealed chambers that were intended to guard something, archives of knowledge, objects of power, or engineered spaces whose purpose is not obvious at first glance. These rumours sit between the romantic and the plausible. Think of a sealed room beneath a tomb, its mouth closed by a stone plug, and its air still for millennia. What would such a room contain? Texts in unknown script, metal objects with unfamiliar alloys, devices whose purpose eludes our categories? The imagination can roam here, calmly, weighing what such hidden spaces might hold and why a culture would choose to seal them away. Another thread is the record of geophysical inquiry. Over the late 20th century and into the present, archaeologists and scientific teams have used ground-penetrating radar, resistivity surveys, and other non-invasive methods to peer beneath the Earth without disturbing it. These methods sometimes return anomalies, voids, density differences, or reflections that suggest cavities where, on the surface, no obvious entrance appears. In several instances, such readings have caused excitement because a detected void could mean an undiscovered chamber or passage. When a new anomaly is reported, the response is measured. Permit applications, careful digging plans, and multidisciplinary teams brought in to test hypotheses. The process is slow by design. It protects fragile contexts and honours the layers of human activity that make excavation a delicate art. Yet the very existence of unexplored or newly discovered voids invites wonder and the soft possibility that knowledge waits in the dark. There are also accounts, some public, some passed quietly among researchers, that speak of finds which do not fit easy typologies. Local reports and a few archaeologists have sometimes mentioned metallic objects and inscribed panels recovered from contexts that puzzled them. Metals with unusual composition, symbols that did not immediately match known scripts, or fittings that suggested a non-local design. These reports are not always formalized into peer-reviewed papers. Often they begin as field notes, letters, or internal reports flagged for further testing. The cautious language of professional archaeology, further analysis required, context uncertain, can sound opaque to curious listeners, and in the silence that follows, rumour gathers. For those who follow the Ancient Astronaut thread, such whispers are compelling. What if the plateau hides artifacts that point not only to complex craftsmanship, but to knowledge either traded from afar or gifted by visitors whose technologies did not fit conventional categories? Let us step back into a quieter, more human scene. Imagine a field team on the plateau at dawn, trowels in hand, coffee cooling in a thermos. They gently clear sand from a ground feature that looks like ordinary bedrock. A small, oily fragment peels away from Earth, something metallic, darkened with age, and shaped with an edge that looks purposeful. They bag the sample, record its coordinates, and send it for analysis. The lab receives the fragment and, after patient work, finds that its microstructure does not exactly match known local alloys. The lab reports back to the field team, analyse further, compare isotopes, and collaborate with specialists. That procedural sequence, discovery, documentation, lab test, and cautious reporting, is how science handles the unusual, but it is also the kind of sequence that, in the slow of time, nurtures legend, the buried crate, the overnight transfer, the catalogue entry that reads like a private note. Each step compounds the mystery for outside watchers, even as scientists do their steady work. There are two voices from within Egypt who have expressed measured astonishment. Some archaeologists, speaking frankly and sometimes off the record, have described uncanny finds that made them pause. A metal fitting whose machining looked advanced, a symbol carved in a style that felt other, or a void detected beneath layers of fill that begs careful interrogation. Those statements are often hedged with professional caution, an awareness that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, that contamination and mixing of contexts are real risks, and that a misread fragment can mislead an entire narrative. Yet the emotional core of these testimonies is human and simple. Trained eyes can still feel surprise when they encounter something unexpected, and surprise is the first fuel of inquiry. We should also consider the cultural and political climate around such finds. Egypt's monuments are world heritage, and the nation rightly protects them against rash excavation or exploitation. When a team reports something sensitive, especially something that could affect national identity, tourism, or religious feeling, authorities govern access tightly. This stewardship is protective by necessity, but it can look to the outside like gatekeeping. The image of sealed chambers and restricted reports fits easily into a story about institutions guarding knowledge. In many cases, the reality is less conspiratorial and more pragmatic. Preservation concerns, the need to prevent looting, and the importance of thorough testing before any public statement. Still, to watchers who want a more thrilling narrative, these practical measures feel like a curtain that hides a grander stage. Another soft current in these tales flows from colonial-era accounts and earlier expeditions, reports that sometimes included misinterpreted artifacts or over-enthusiastic claims. Early explorers and amateur antiquarians sometimes misread contexts or exaggerated finds in letters and travelogues. When modern researchers revisit the same locales with better methods, they often correct earlier mistakes. Yet the echo of those early dramatic reports lingers. In the space between 19th century romance and 21st century forensic method, stories shift shape. A misidentified metallic fragment in the 1800s becomes a whispered relic of other origin in later retellings. That transformation is a human pattern we see in many places, not proof of deception, but proof of how stories grow as details are retold. Let us also touch the evocative idea of underground hangars or archives. In the imagining encouraged by some, certain subterranean spaces could have functioned as storage or maintenance facilities for craft, or as repositories where delicate materials were protected from the elements. The language is cinematic. A vaulted room with fitted blocks, a platform carved to receive an object's base, conduits for fluid or air. If such spaces exist, they would likely have been repurposed over the centuries, sealed, reused for burials, filled with debris or otherwise altered, so that reading their original function is a careful exercise in multidisciplinary detective work. Engineers who study load-bearing features, mineralogists who analyze residues, and archaeologists who read stratigraphy must collaborate to untangle reuse from original design. That it's possible to imagine an underground hangar in human terms is enough to let one's wonder stretch. Whether that imagination maps to reality is precisely what patient excavation and testing must determine. Through this chapter, we're also accompanied by stories of those who sought access and were redirected. Scholars who petition for permits often wait long seasons for approval. Teams that are allowed to make preliminary surveys sometimes find anomalies that require further study, but further study requires more funding, permissions, and time. These bureaucratic realities can feel like obstacles to a listener eager for dramatic confirmation. Yet they are also reality checks that remind us how fragile and precious archaeological contexts are. Rushing into excavation can destroy the very traces we need to learn the truth. Before we close this chapter, listen to a quiet human story that captures both the longing and the responsibility of this work. A young Egyptian archaeologist, a child of local villages and trained in the city, stands before a flagged area on the plateau. She remembers her grandmother's stories of lights over the fields and her professor's dry cautions about context. She collects samples, records layers, and writes meticulous notes late into the night. Years later, her careful documentation helps colleagues reinterpret a puzzling anomaly, not as a single exotic object, but as evidence of cross-cultural trade, a plausible human explanation that is itself profound. Her work shows the best of archaeology, curiosity balanced with discipline, wonder shaped into knowledge. Yet even with such care, there remain puzzles that refuse tidy answers, holes that appear on scans, fragments that defy easy classification, and legends that circle back into modern inquiry. So we hold both things, the sober, careful grind of science, and the human hunger to imagine that beneath those stones there may be records or objects that reframe our story. Whether the plateau's secrets will resolve into new evidence for ancient visitors, or whether they will enrich our understanding of human artistry and exchange, the emotional truth remains the same. The past still speaks, sometimes softly and sometimes with a clang, and it asks us to listen with tools and with patience. As we prepare to move into the next chapter, know that the questions raised here will echo forward into discussions of genetics, into claims of sealed archives elsewhere, and into modern reports of increased activity near sacred sites. If you are staying with me, there are gentle promises ahead. More stories, more witnesses, and a synthesis that will weave the threads into a richer tapestry. Stay with the calm curiosity that brought you here. In the end, we will gather the strands and let them form a luminous, thoughtful possibility you can carry with you. Chapter 16. DNA of the Gods. Genetic Clues. Take a deep, slow breath, letting the calm of night settle around you as we shift our focus from monuments and hidden chambers to the very blueprint of life itself. Imagine, gently, the microscopic strands of DNA coiling in quiet laboratories, twisting within every cell, carrying the story of human ancestry in the language of nucleotides, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Within those long, spiraling molecules lie the instructions that shape our bodies, guide our development, and influence the subtle traits that make each person unique. In this chapter, we will explore the extraordinary notion that somewhere within our DNA may be echoes of an influence that reaches beyond Earth, a possibility that sparks wonder, curiosity, and deep reflection. Modern genetics has revealed that humanity did not evolve in a perfectly linear, predictable way. There are jumps, surprising mutations, and sudden leaps in cognitive abilities that cannot always be explained by gradual adaptation alone. Consider the sudden rise of complex language, the invention of agriculture, and the rapid development of early urban centres. From a quiet, evolutionary perspective, these transformations happened in astonishingly short spans of time. For those who look at ancient texts and modern DNA studies together, a question arises. Could there have been a guiding hand, subtle genetic intervention, or exchange of knowledge that accelerated human potential? We begin with the Sumerian tablets, some of the oldest written records known to humankind. These clay documents describe the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens to earth and imparted knowledge to early humans. Some passages, interpreted by researchers interested in the Ancient Astronaut Hypothesis, suggest that these beings did more than teach agriculture or building. They may have influenced human biology itself. The texts mention humans being created in the image of the gods and endowed with particular skills and capacities. While poetic, these phrases invite reflection in the context of modern genetics. Could stories of divine creation actually encode memories of interventions, biological or technological, that shaped early humanity in ways not fully understood today? Turning to science, we find intriguing genetic anomalies. There are sequences in human DNA that seem to have no clear evolutionary precedent. Certain traits appear suddenly, without a gradual record in closely related species. For example, the human capacity for abstract thought, complex language, and high-order reasoning seems to have emerged abruptly in archaeological timeframes. While evolutionary biologists offer plausible natural explanations, the anomalies open space for speculation. Could these jumps indicate influence from external sources, or at least interactions that left subtle but detectable traces in our genetic material? Some researchers propose that the mythological accounts of hybrid beings, like the Nephilim or part divine, part human entities could encode memories of actual events, the blending of species, experimentation, or guided evolution. Whether these are symbolic narratives or literal accounts, they share a focus on extraordinary growth in intelligence, creativity, and physical ability. Modern genetics is still uncovering the complexities of human development, and the possibility that ancient texts captured an awareness of these processes is a fascinating bridge between the mystical and the scientific. Consider also the notion of a missing link, not as a single creature, but as a series of transitional forms that never left sufficient fossil evidence. Genetics allows us to infer relationships from DNA remnants, and sometimes those analyses hint at unexpected admixtures, unknown branches that contributed to modern humans. Could some of these genetic signatures represent contact with beings not native to Earth, or perhaps guided experimentation to enhance survival and cognition? It is a question that sits softly at the edge of what we can test, measured with awe and restraint. A gentle way to visualize this is to imagine a library of life, where each organism carries shelves of instructions written in delicate, invisible script. Within that library, humans carry annotations, marginalia if you will, that seem slightly out of place, hints of information inserted in a way that does not follow the usual evolutionary narrative. Scientists detect these subtle variations with painstaking analysis, noting rare sequences that appear unique to our species. They study mitochondrial DNA, Y chromosomes, and chromosomal patterns, tracing connections backward in time. When anomalies appear, the questions are layered. Are they natural? Are they accidental? Could they be the result of intentional influence, either by advanced ancestors or by beings from beyond our planet? Some geneticists have explored these ideas cautiously, noting patterns of accelerated evolution, unusual genetic markers, and traits that appear suddenly in historical records. These findings, when combined with ancient narratives, hint at a story that is more complex than textbooks often admit. There is a sense that human history is not solely a story of survival and adaptation, but also one of guidance, observation, and perhaps subtle intervention. The poetry of the ancients, the stories of gods walking among humans, of gifts of fire, of knowledge shared in whispers, could be reframed as a memory of biological and cultural influence. As we move through this chapter, let us imagine the hands of the ancients not as mythic archetypes alone, but as possible actors in the story of human development. Every strand of DNA is a quiet echo of the past, a record of countless generations. If we listen carefully, if we examine both ancient texts and modern science, we begin to sense the possibility that humanity carries more than the story of survival. We may carry traces of mentorship, guidance, or even direct intervention that shaped our destiny in ways subtle, precise, and enduring. Let us end this chapter with a visual, a starry sky mirrored in the delicate spiral of DNA, each nucleotide catching starlight as it twists. Imagine that some of our genes carry faint, shimmering memories of visitors who looked upon Earth long ago, perhaps bending the raw material of life toward intelligence, creativity, and wonder. Whether literal or symbolic, these strands connect us to a story that stretches across time and space, one that merges science with legend, and invites us to contemplate not just who we are, but from where we might have come. Chapter 17. The Return of the Sky. Beings. Take a slow, calming breath, letting your awareness settle into a rhythm that is gentle and unhurried. Picture the night sky, vast and dark, dotted with stars whose quiet light has travelled across millennia to reach your eyes. It is here, beneath this cosmic canopy, that ancient prophecies, celestial cycles, and whispered stories converge, hinting at a possibility both familiar and extraordinary: the return of the sky beings who, according to texts and oral traditions, once walked among humanity. In this chapter, we will explore prophecies from various cultures, examine modern reports that echo ancient accounts, and consider the quiet patterns that suggest the past and present may be more connected than we often allow ourselves to imagine. We begin with the Hopi people of North America, whose oral traditions speak of the blue star Kachina, a celestial entity whose appearance signals a time of transformation, renewal, and the reawakening of sacred knowledge. The Hopi describe the Kachina as a harbinger of both warning and guidance, an entity that will return when humanity is prepared, or perhaps when the cycles of the stars align once more. This story, like all prophecies, is layered with symbolic imagery, yet it invites contemplation. Could the Kachina, like other sky beings in global traditions, reference entities who once visited Earth and whose presence is cyclical, observed in celestial rhythms and echoed in human memory? From the American Southwest, we move across continents to the Maya civilization. The Maya recorded intricate calendars and astronomical cycles with astonishing precision. Their texts speak of cycles that repeat across centuries, sometimes tied to celestial bodies, sometimes to extraordinary beings who influence human destiny. The Maya foresaw times when the alignment of planets and stars would coincide with significant events on Earth, including the return of entities who once shared knowledge and wisdom. These alignments, documented in carvings and codices, suggest a cosmology in which the heavens and earth are intimately connected, and in which celestial visitors are part of a recurring pattern rather than a one-time event. Ancient Egypt offers yet another perspective. Pharaohs and priests meticulously tracked celestial movements, noting cycles of Sirius, Orion, and other stars that guided both agricultural activity and religious observances. Certain hieroglyphs and temple inscriptions hint at beings who descended from the stars, sometimes described as gods, other times as teachers or overseers. The pattern is familiar: a group of entities whose arrival is tied to cosmic rhythms, whose presence marks periods of transformation and revelation, and whose return, though obscured in time, is foretold in sacred texts. The resonance with Hopi and Maya traditions is striking, suggesting a thematic thread across cultures separated by continents and centuries. Modern reports bring a different, quieter cadence to this story. Around sacred sites and remote locations, observers sometimes report unusual aerial phenomena. Lights that move in ways that defy conventional flight, objects that accelerate silently, and figures glimpsed briefly yet distinctly in the sky. Some witnesses claim these occurrences coincide with astronomical events, echoing the ancient calendar systems. Pilots, night watchers, and even local residents have recorded these events in logs, diaries, or casual accounts. While each observation alone may not constitute proof, the cumulative pattern creates a tapestry that resonates with the ancient prophecies, a sense of presence, a pattern repeating across centuries, a quiet reminder that the sky is more than a backdrop. It is a stage for interaction. Whispered stories from contactees also add to the narrative. Individuals across different countries describe experiences where beings, often resembling descriptions from ancient texts, communicate messages of guidance, caution, or insight. Some claim these encounters happen near sacred sites, ancient monuments, or locations aligned with celestial markers. The descriptions often include luminous eyes, unusual body proportions, and a sense of profound intelligence. While skepticism is warranted, the consistency of these accounts over time and geography invites curiosity and reflection. There is a shared motif: beings who return not with violence or alarm, but with a sense of purpose, as if continuing a dialogue begun long ago. There is also the subtle possibility that these return visits are not merely physical but informational. Ancient texts describe the imparting of knowledge, methods of agriculture, construction, astronomy, and governance. Perhaps the sky beings continue to influence humanity not through direct contact alone, but through subtle guidance embedded in patterns of observation, in intuition, and in cultural evolution. This idea harmonizes the mythic with the observable, offering a pathway to understand how humanity could be simultaneously independent and influenced, free yet shaped by forces that remain partly unseen. As we contemplate this chapter, consider the cycles that govern life, the orbit of the Earth, the phases of the Moon, the annual movement of stars across the night sky. Just as seasons return, so too might the presence of the sky beings. Whether literal or symbolic, these cycles offer a comforting rhythm, arrival, departure, and eventual return. They remind us that the story of humanity is not static, that learning and revelation occur in waves, and that the cosmos is an enduring partner in our unfolding narrative. Let your imagination drift gently through the constellations, tracing invisible lines that connect ancient observatories, pyramids, stone circles, and sacred mountains. Each point of light is a marker, a signal across time. In the quiet of your mind, picture the sky beings approaching once more, not as a threat, but as a whisper from the past, carrying fragments of knowledge, memory, and cosmic perspective. Their return is framed not as sudden dramatic spectacle, but as a slow, patient unfolding, an invitation to notice, to reflect, and to align ourselves with patterns larger than our individual lives. As we leave this chapter behind, hold the possibility in your awareness that the sky, always present, holds more than distant stars. It may hold the quiet return of entities who shaped our beginnings, who watched over our growth, and who continue to influence us in ways subtle, mysterious, and profoundly instructive. Allow this thought to linger softly, like starlight settling on still waters, as we prepare to move into the next chapter, where the full tapestry of humanity's forgotten origins will begin to emerge in gentle, compelling detail. Chapter 18: Humanity's Forgotten Origins. Take a slow, grounding breath and let the world narrow to the way a single thread can hold an entire tapestry. We have walked stones and read skies. We have listened to elders and to technicians. We have held small artifacts and imagined great archives. Now, in this gentle closing of our long journey, we gather the threads into a wider pattern and ask, softly but insistently, what story they compose together. Could it be that our history is deeper, more woven with the cosmos, and more intentionally shaped than the textbooks alone sometimes allow? Let us sit with that possibility, with care and calm, letting each fragment settle into a meaningful whole. Imagine a slow river of time, broad and deep, flowing from unknown headwaters through canyon and plain. Along its banks are moments, myths that name the teachers from the sky, monuments that mirror constellations, artifacts that hum with unexpected precision, and genetic notes that hint at sudden change. Each of these is a tributary into the river of human origin. When we follow one alone, it is beautiful and suggestive. When we follow many together, their confluence creates a new view, one in which humanity's rise is not only a local, terrestrial story, but a chapter in a larger cosmic conversation. Consider how myths across continents repeat certain motifs. Sky teachers who instruct, giants who shape the early order, cities of light that vanish beneath waves, and knowledge that is encoded into ritual so it will survive social upheaval. These are not identical stories. but they are variations on a theme: contact, instruction, and legacy. When such motifs occur in cultures that had no obvious contact with each other, the repetition becomes striking. It is as if human memory retains a set of core experiences and expresses them in ways that fit local languages and ecosystems. That pattern, for many, suggests the imprint of something real, events or influences that left a shared psychological and cultural imprint that humans then translated into their own symbolic worlds. Now fold into that pattern the material evidence we have considered: monuments aligned to stars, mechanical artifacts that record celestial motion, stonework so precise it staggers modern craftsmen, and oral histories like those of the Dogon that preserve astonishingly specific star lore. Add to this the testimonies of modern insiders, pilots, engineers, archivists, who describe objects and procedures that do not fit the comfortable maps of ordinary history. Each line of evidence carries uncertainty. Each has been contested, reinterpreted, or explained in multiple ways. Yet when these lines converge, myth, monument, artifact, testimony, and genome, the combined weight tilts toward a hypothesis that merits attention: that humanity's story contains chapters of external contact, sustained instruction, and technological exchange. It is calming to approach this idea without spectacle. The ancient visitors, if they came, need not be imagined as cinematic invaders or gods of conquest. Instead, picture teachers and engineers arriving, observing and sharing techniques that were practical and profound, ways to manage water, to align a community with the sky, to sharpen metal, or to model movement in the heavens. These were gifts that would produce rapid social changes: irrigation that creates surplus, surplus that produces specialization, specialization that produces writing, and writing that fixes memory in clay and stone. Over time, the initial human recipients would sanctify the teachers, call them gods, and weave their instruction into ritual. Thus, what might begin as practical mentorship becomes mythic lineage, a gentle alchemy of memory. There are stories, both ancient and modern, that make such a scenario feel near and human. An old farmer in a river valley recounts how his ancestors learned to create terraces after a strange visitor showed them a technique for moving water. A mason in the Andes pauses at a joint and remembers an elder telling how the pattern of cuts was taught by a stranger who arrived with a new way of planning. A retired technician describes a crate moved through a hangar, the engineer's hands tender with careful measurement as he first saw a fragment of non-local metal. These are not grand universal proclamations. They are small human testimonies that, taken together, create a mosaic of possibility. We must also attend to the sober, methodical voice of science in this gentle synthesis. Archaeology, genetics, and materials science demand verification, stratigraphic clarity, reproducible lab results, and open peer review. Many claims of ancient contact falter under scrutiny, but that does not negate the value of the question itself. Science progresses by weighing anomalies, testing hypotheses, and revising beliefs when evidence demands it. The most fruitful approach is collaborative. Let field archaeologists, laboratory scientists, indigenous knowledge holders, and careful historians examine each thread together. When they do, true surprises are possible, and those surprises are what expand our understanding in the most responsible ways. There is also a moral texture to the idea of forgotten origins. If our species received help, technological, cultural, or even biological, what does that imply about debt, stewardship, and identity? It suggests humility, that our achievements may be partly the fruit of relationships and assistance, and that our duty is to honour those gifts with wise care for the planet and its peoples. It invites a reimagining of myths, not as primitive errors, but as repositories of knowledge and ethics, instructing future generations on how to live with the memory of gifts received. As we sweep toward the final, restful moments of this documentary, imagine a wide hall where voices from across time meet: a Sumerian scribe laying a clay tablet, a Dogon elder chanting star names under a masked sky, an engineer polishing a small gear that marks planetary cycles, and a modern scientist turning microscope slides. They do not argue, they exchange like travellers passing bread. In that image lives the heart of the ancient astronaut possibility, not the triumphalist claim that ancient peoples were incapable without help, but the generous idea that humanity has always been in conversation with the Earth, with its neighbours, and perhaps with visitors whose presence nudged us toward tools, art, and social complexity. If you have followed this long, slow thread to this point, you have done something rare. You sat with nuance, you tolerated ambiguity, and you allowed wonder to coexist with skeptical discipline. That balance is the best posture for any serious inquiry into the past. It keeps us open without being credulous, curious without being speculative for spectacle's sake. As we close this chapter and prepare to continue on in our series, remember the gentle question that began our journey: were the gods of old divine messengers or extraterrestrial visitors? Tonight, we have gathered many stones, many stories, and many testimonies. We have seen how easily myth and memory intertwine, and how technical artifacts can both illuminate and complicate our picture. We do not end with a single, definitive answer. Instead, we end with an invitation to keep listening, to support careful research, and to honour the breadth of human experience, its inventiveness, its openness to the sky, and its capacity to receive and transform knowledge. Now breathe deeply, let your shoulders soften, and carry this luminous possibility into sleep. Perhaps the gods never left. Perhaps they were guides disguised as teachers. Perhaps we are the living legacy of conversations that stretched between the earth and the stars. Rest with that gentle wonder,